Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Football, it began simple enough. Line up 11 men on one side, 11 on the other. The team with the ball is the offense. The team without it is the defense. Snap the ball, you run, you collide, and you tackle. But now football is much more. No longer just a game of brawn, it's also a game of brains. This is Bear Necessities.
Good evening, everybody. Barflies, thank you for showing up. This is Bear Necessities. So we're just starting to get into our groove. I used to say the show's at infancy. It still is, but I like to mess around, and we're just going to have another smooth night. I'm Jordan Silveira, your host. As always, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, hit those thumbs up, share this video. You know the drill, too. Continue to follow all the great content at Barroom Network. We love our president, our maestro, Aldo Gandia. You know, prayers go out to him. I know he's got his own personal stuff going on, too. But, Aldo, love you, man. Have a wonderful evening yourself. Just coming off of a great Bear debate. I'm excited to just talk a little bit about that. I love Danny Shimon and his crazy takes with something I disagree with, Kairos Togga. You know, just that's all right. And if Danny and I are ever going to have a true debate, what we really need to debate about is the fact that I think his evaluation of safeties in the modern game, the way that the game is legislated, is totally off. But that's just me. I see a few people in here. Cliff, thank you so much. My man Skokes, talking about president of the Barroom, Aldo Gandia, at Aldo Barkeeper on Twitter. Barroom Network on Twitter, Barroom Network on YouTube, as you're seeing this now, or you're watching it on Twitter via live. Let's go ahead and hit the follow on the YouTube. Skokes, we're talking about president of Barroom. You're president of the Braxton Jones Club, so love to see you here. Thanks a lot. Cliff, you're saying YouTube gave you the link about 10 minutes ago anyway to have it appear earlier. Not too sure. I apologize about the whole starting a few minutes late. It's just this is where we're going to actually get into a little bit of an announcement. And I'm always willing to hear a little bit of feedback from the chat as we've kind of let people filter in. But with that being said, let's just start with the topic of time slot, because this is not, I don't enjoy starting late. I know that I'm just busy with work and Pacific time anyways, no excuses. I am going to be moving Bear Necessities to Saturday mornings from here on out. Thursdays are just becoming more and more difficult. I'm rushing home from work, trying to eat dinner, make thumbnails, make video descriptions, watch Thursday Night Football. And I'm selfish, guys. I want to watch my Thursday Night Football without disruptions of other shows going on and making thumbnails and things like that. So I am going to – no, Cliff, no. I know you're not bitching. No worries at all. Chubbs is saying Thursdays is a ladies' night. No, it's funny enough, Chubbs. Wife is there going, hey, do you think you could do a shorter show tonight? Because I'd like to see you for the day and spend some time with you. But that's the reality here. Is I wish it was ladies' night. It's more of like, hey, Jordan's a football nerd and he just wants to consume Thursday night football and all this other stuff. So I will be moving it to Saturday mornings for J2K, Chubbs, Skokes, Cliff. I watch college football, but I'm not like, I don't sit there and just chug it through the whole day. I kind of tend to watch players and stories, but I am going to be doing it Saturday mornings. If there's a better time that makes sense, I'm with it. And mind you, I'm in Pacific time. I'm actually thinking probably 10 a.m., 10:30, 11 a.m. that will probably be going live on Saturdays. So with that being said, that'll be the new plan. That'll give me time on Friday nights, even if I have to stay up late to do thumbnails, things of that sort. So we'll be doing Bear Necessities on Saturday mornings. Again, unless you all have feedback about, well, no, college football starts at 11 and you need to be on by this time, I'll take all that feedback. But if I have it my way, we'll be doing around 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time on Saturdays. Chubb's saying, don't they have Saturday morning cartoons anymore? Or they don't have Saturday morning cartoons anymore. It's a good call. Yeah. Cliff, as you're saying, yeah, Pacific California time. We got St. Omni in the chat. Saint, what's up, brother? Love having my financial advisors sitting here. Hey, you got Adam Johns. Roquan, who's St. Omni? Oh, St. Omni's a guy that I trust for my finance. Okay, cool. Well, St., Appreciate you hanging out. I shouldn't say I'm not the biggest fan of your client. Just that I wasn't a big fan of your client getting paid. So, which means you didn't get paid. So sorry about that. We could still be friends though. Can't wait till Lucas Patrick's back. We finally benched that ball. Well, Jeff, I'm not going to call it mustard for a bum, but I certainly agree. I think Lucas Patrick's an upgrade. I'm excited for that. I should do some shorts that aren't live, but I can watch whenever. Yeah, no, J2K, it's a great idea. I think that's something I've been actually considering doing. I'll tell you what, if you all have questions for me, you can find me, Jordan Silveira, on Twitter. You can send me questions. I can do little shorts that way. So this is Jordan Silveira. Jeremy asked, blah, 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 blah. This is my opinion, and we can do shorts like that. So J2K, Jeremy asking what time. 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific time. Depends on if you have showings. Work comes first, of course. Trying to compete with college football. Yeah, J-Rock, I'm not trying to compete. College football will be like, get this guy out of here. I'm a small fish. I don't matter. But and a bit like I said, it's just being a little selfish. I want to be able to watch Thursday night football. If I need to stay up super late after work on a Friday, coming up with show plans, creating thumbnails, creating the broadcast, all that stuff, it just allows me to do it where we're not rushing through on a Saturday and I'm not starting late to inconvenience you all. So just trying to create some consistency. So we will be going Saturday mornings. As I see Renewable here, thanks for joining. Heavy cream, condensed milk. Okay. O-line looking decent against the Seahawks, absolutely. Spread info that you were bumped for a previous guest. I hate you. That can make. Okay, so wait. You were supposed to be on this upcoming week, Cliff, right? And then you're saying that they bumped you to a later day. Well, that's not fun. All love to those guys, but damn it, I don't think you should be bumped. They're going to sit here and pick all the different barflies out of the crowd and say, come do our stuff. No problem. It's all love. They're a sister podcast. But let's not sit here and say, oh, Cliff, come on over. Now I'm going to bump you because, we're big time. Just don't love that. Chubb saying, just know Jordan will ignore you if you roast him with Jenkins' bad foul. No. Chubb, you like to give me a hard time because I did kind of spout off. I love Tevin Jenkins, have a crush on him for all of the ways he plays offensive line. I still think that he can play tackle. I'm going to stick with that. I know Danny Shimon, Neil Stopchinski, all those guys want to say that he can't play tackle. To be clear, I actually think he could probably play left too, but that wasn't what I was asking for. I think he could be a right tackle. I think he does struggle with speed on the outside. Guess what? The guy's played less than a full season. As far as I'm concerned, many people want to sit here and expect a lot out of Justin Fields. Why don't we be fair and say both Tevin Jenkins, Justin Fields don't even have a half of a season logged? Justin Fields, what did he play and start? It wasn't a ton of games. So both of these guys are, in some ways, new scheme, new system, new culture. They are essentially rookies again. So I don't expect many rookies to come out there and just all of a sudden be perfect tackle prospects. I think that Jenkins can play tackle, but I'm with you, Chubbs. I like Jenkins in guard. That's fine. Put him in a phone booth. Ask him to own people, displace people off the ball. I think that he's got enough of a pass pro technique savvy with just his different techniques with his hand usage that can limit some of that pass pro issues that you would see out on an island. We've seen him get beat a couple times at guard. I think some of that's just par for the course when you're being asked to change positions. He's talked about it today. Guard it. Everything's in a phone booth. Everything's right there for you as opposed to tackle. You get time to think about it, and it's really a chess match. I take a kick step. Wait, what are they going to go fake outside, then try to cross my face? So I think some of the pressures that you've seen are par for course. What I was really impressed by, and we talk about it, is, Tevin shouldn't play tackle because of his foot speed. Yeah, I just watched a guy cross his face in Seattle and watched him continue to recover and turn his ass around to give Justin Fields time to escape. Sounds like pretty good footwork and speed to me, right? So if he can do it at guard, I tend to think that guy can do it at tackle. But let's go ahead and put him at guard. Let's roll with it. Let's see how he does. And this is something I've been meaning to talk about with Bears fans too. If you were to be told that Tevin Jenkins was your starting right guard for the next 6-7 years and you traded up to get him at number 39, I've been making the joke of like Quentin Nelson, but that's a totally different thing. Quentin Nelson went number 6 overall, Hall of Fame talent. But put it this way, and I know it's different. I understand Trey Smith went in the 6th round because he had the blood clots issue. But if you were told that you could get a guy like Trey Smith at 39 overall, and I'm not trying to sit here and just tell you Tevin Jenkins is Trey Smith, but I think that's a fair comparison. They're both nasty offensive linemen. They're great in the run game. Both really solid players. They're both playing right guard now. If you were told you could have Trey Smith today for a 39 overall pick, you had to trade up to get him. I have a hard time saying that I'd be upset with that value. Yes, of course, it's sweet when you're able to be, Brett Veach and Andy Reid in Kansas City and snag that guy in the 6th. But here we are. Just take it for what it is. If Tevin Jenkins is your long-term starter at right guard and he's a people mover, I don't have a problem with that. So let's move along here. As you say, Chubbs, you wanted it. You bring up Tevin Jenkins. I'm going to just spout for forever and ever and ever. Saturday AM, breakfast, drinks, and Jordan. Yeah, sounds good to me. Renewable. Sorry about Daz. Yeah, Daz is a sad story. The reality is, look, you got to – when your number's called, you have a very short window in this league, and his number was called and had a few too many mistakes. J2K, appreciate this. We'll save that because we're going to talk about it. Borum or Reef, leaning towards Reef, Jeff. Reef, I've said this a few times. I'll continue to say it. I think Reef and Schofield were made to be brought in to raise the floor up, raise the basement. If Borum gets hurt, if Jenkins doesn't play well, we trade him. What do we know we have to roll out in week 1? Can we get this level of play? That is what Reef and Schofield to me represented, with an hope that Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Larry Borum, Zach Thomas, Ja'Tyre Carter, those guys ultimately strive above. And then we hopefully don't have to play Reef. And here's the secret thing too. Let's not play Reef because then we don't have to pay Reef. If he's sitting, you get to avoid all of that heavy money because it was a $3 million base. And I think it went up to like 9 or something of that nature, all based on relatively easy to hit playtime parameters. So if you're able to not play him, you don't have to pay him as much either. So I'm going to go with Borum. I like Borum too. I did a deep review of Borum. That was actually episode 1. You can find the whole playlist on the YouTube for Bear Necessities. Episode 1's all about Borum. I think I exhausted that topic. I think he's totally capable of being a solid tackle. I think he's had somewhat of a rough preseason, but again, it's his preseason. The whole idea is the games don't count. Let's use this time to get better. St. Omni, Big said Reef can't move along practice. Yeah, maybe. Did have the ankle issue last year. How the Niners look. Russell, we'll talk about that. It's actually, I'll save that because that'll be my way to remember. That's what we'll kind of kick it off with as I try to catch up here. Yeah, but rarely by power. Yeah, Cornelius, that's my thing, and that's fine. That's the point. Let's put him at guard then. You can't beat me with speed when I've got a center and my tackle right next to me. And even if you do, we saw it. He got beat, crossed his face. Technically, that speed hurt him. He found a way to recover. I'll work with it. And that's the whole point. You got 4-4 Justin Fields in the backfield, right? So if you've got an offensive line that gets beat, ask Justin to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, and he did. So I love it. Absolutely, Cliff. This is one of my favorite parts, and just, feel free to continue to espouse your beliefs on it. I think it's important. The discipline, the professionalism that you're seeing with the staff is really what I think is going to keep this team relevant throughout the year, when I actually think that there's a little bit of a talent deficiency on their roster compared to others in the league. 2 preseason games, the only time they all line looked bad was that one side. Yeah, I think they've had a few issues, but my whole thing, and this is where we want to talk about it a little bit, I keep bringing up that Tevin Jenkins play, and there's a few of them. Larry Borum has had a couple. Braxton Jones, everybody loves him. He's been solid too. He's just had a couple rough plays. Karlaftis had one that he drove him back. That first play of the Seattle game, anybody that wants to go back and watch it, Braxton Jones got juked out of his socks. Luckily, Herbert stepped up, protected him. As many people that want to slam Herbert for not doing a great job pass protecting on one play, forget the first play where he totally saved Braxton Jones's ass. This is the thing to me, is that the offensive line has had a few bad plays, but I stand to just sometimes, yes. Would we all want Quentin Nelsons and Trent Williams? Yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, if you are keeping my quarterback clean, make sure that Justin is not ending up on the ground. I'll take it. No, it's not perfect. I will tell you, Tevin Jenkins lost that rep in Seattle where the defensive lineman crossed his face on the inside, and he had to ultimately have Fields flush out of the pocket. That's a lost rep. But I'm not going to give it a horrible grade. You did not get Justin killed. Justin Fields did not end up on his butt, didn't get sacked. I'll take it. That to me, it's sure, we always want to strive for better, but you want to talk about a personal baseline. Are you doing enough as a steady Eddie, a set and forget guy where you're not getting my quarterback killed? I'll work with that. Sounds like Ross. Yeah, Ross Blacklock. If Ross Blacklock gets cut, God damn, I'd beg the Bears to take a look at him. It's actually funny you've mentioned. I've said his name a few times as a guy that would be a fantastic 3-tech option. It's funny that you also mentioned that because we're going to talk about the Niners. The Texans were the opposing team, and a guy that I won't shut up about and I'm not going to stop is Thomas Booker, a guy that was there for the Bears at 150 that I wish they would have taken, because Thomas Booker's looked fantastic, had a great night tonight. And the reason that's important, Ross Blacklock playing the same position, higher drafted. If he indeed was cut, that means that they're super high on Booker. Going to disappoint me a little bit that the Bears didn't select him. Jeremy Tevin recovers well, still so young. When the people call him a vet, he'll be considered. Yeah, we'll see. Apologetic. Yeah, no, I'm just giving him, just busting his balls, Cliff. It's totally fine. Dan is a good dude. Nomad's a good dude. I'm sure you'll have a good time in there. And like I said, I'll tune in. Draft a white hair in the second. Absolutely. See, and this is the funny, Jeremy, I'm with you. Like, I thought Abraham Lucas, I got shit on Twitter because I was saying everybody should look at this. And they didn't look great that game. But Abraham Lucas, I'll tell you what, there was a rep where Abraham Lucas just completely bulldozed Travis Gibson, just put him on his ass. I think that Abraham Lucas has actually played really well. And the funny part about that is, Washington State tackles only know how to pass block. They don't know how to run block. And Abraham Lucas has been mauling people in the run game this preseason. Jenkins over Leatherwood, absolutely. I think that Leatherwood's a funny name because people have speculated that he may be on the street. Saint, with your finances, Jenkins at guards the next year, absolutely. Bold predictions, EQ and Komet. All right, Skokes. I mean, maybe. We'll see. I certainly didn't have Elijah Hicks fumble recovering a muffed punt for a touchdown. Aldo in the house, I appreciate you. Aldo, if you weren't here earlier, we're just talking about moving the show to Saturday mornings so that we don't rush it as I catch up. Okay. J-Rock asking me, I guess we'll do a little bit of this. Focheezy in the house, what's up? Thank you. Alex saying you trading for Denzel Mims. J-Rock asking, what are your thoughts on making an offer for Denzel Mims? I will touch on this a little bit before we get into the proper topics. I like Denzel Mims a lot. He's actually a guy that I was mentioning as a worthy trade option. I've a little bit of background. This is going to sound wild. After the Cincinnati game last year, and I know that was the great game where they had Burrow first forcing 2 or 3 turnovers in consecutive plays, I've been advocating. I just knew that it didn't look good, even in that game where you had Fields coming in at the half, and just didn't get a good feel even when they beat Cincinnati. And I had said, just sell off the talent. You clearly aren't going anywhere. If you keep Nagy and Pace, this is a mistake. So just sell off the talent while you have a chance. Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn, A-Rob, who else was there? Nick Foles, if you could have, Andy Dalton, anybody that was available that made sense. If you can get something for, James Daniels, do it. And one of the things that I was saying back then is Denzel Mims would have been a great option. I think Denzel Mims, coming from Baylor, he is your ball winner, a guy that's acrobatic, going to go up and get it, decent speed, limited route tree. I was actually talking to Greg Gabriel, earlier resident scout with Barroom Network, former scouting director for the Chicago Bears, and he's not a fan of Denzel Mims. I'm going to just playfully poke at you, Greg. I know that you didn't necessarily expand upon it on Twitter. He's saying that, look, who's the last Baylor receiver to make it in the league? I think that comes across as lazy analysis. Don't scout the helmet. But I know, Greg, that you would tell me it's just about the way that they coach up their receivers, that play style. I know some people feel, well, if he didn't make it at the Jets, why would he make it in Chicago? Look, I would have told the same thing about N'Keal Harry. I wasn't ready to just throw a 7th-round pick at N'Keal Harry. I wasn't such a fan of it at the time. And for that reason, to be quite frank with you, I don't think that the Bears pull a move to get Denzel Mims. They shot their shot with N'Keal Harry. I think they have a bad taste in their mouth at the moment about, we gave a 7th-round pick 2 years from now for a guy. He got hurt. We're not seeing any benefit from it. And you want me to throw another pick at another cast-off. And it's later now. He'd have to learn the offense. He's behind schedule. I don't think it happens. But as far as a talent, and I said this at the time, I would have preferred Denzel Mims much, much, much more than N'Keal Harry, just simply for the athleticism that N'Keal Harry lacks. And Alex, you're saying N'Keal Harry is younger than Mims? Absolutely he is. But I mean, the funny thing is you want to talk about age. This is the GM that likes to draft 24 and 25-year-olds damn near all up and down the board. I think the only guy that wasn't 23, 24, 25 was Gordon or Brisker, one of the two. Zach Thomas older. Ebner, I think, was older. Obviously, Valus. You had Tyre Carter, Gill. I mean, all these guys are older rookies. So I don't think age. I mean, I'll give you an example. A team like the Cleveland Browns loves to draft young. They literally do not draft older prospects. The Bears have shown no sign of that. So I don't think the age is the issue. Cliff saying you wouldn't be surprised to see pick up a half a dozen final week cuts. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely something that we're going to talk about. I'm not going to prognosticate who's going to be cut, but we'll be talking about who makes the roster. And I certainly hope that they're active. A team that's been extremely active is the Giants. Very similar. I was talking about the Seahawks back when Pete Carroll and John Schneider got there and turned over the whole roster over 200 transactions in that year. That has been very similar to what I've seen with the Jets. Giants, excuse me. Boy, I promise I'm not drunk tonight. Giants, they've just been turning over the roster consistently with new people. Alex Sims brought Harry because his blocking scheme you need to block. Absolutely. Alex, I'll show you actually plays where Mims is just owning dudes in the run game. So I'll just respectfully disagree with that. Everyone bitches about Valus. Yeah, well, Valus, I have a different take on Valus. I think if you got a great returner in a great kick returner, return specialist in the third round, I'm fine with it. But I haven't seen anything in very limited reps that suggests to me that he's a ready to go receiver. And that's okay. They're going to scheme touches for him. But, the question is at the time, could you have drafted a guy that was a ready-made receiver, a Jalen Tolbert, more than a return specialist who you have to specifically scheme up touches for? I don't necessarily think one or the other, but, it's just how do you build a team? Giants are a disaster. Well, I don't know, Jeremy. I really like Brian Daboll and Joe Shane. So I think that they're in a bad spot now. What's funny to me, though, is that people say that Ryan Poles was handed – I'll use Jack Wright, who was on Bear Debate, did a great job tonight for Jack. I'll use his term. A lot of people say Ryan Poles inherited a turd burger, as he used it, when he got the job for the Bears. I'm not disagreeing with that. I don't think that it was a desirable location for all of the different cap issues that Ryan Pace left him. But nobody wants to talk about how bad David Gettleman left it for Joe Shane and Brian Daboll when they got to New York. And again, I'm not here to tell you the Bears are doing it wrong. We need to see them play. But I can tell you I certainly think that the Giants may have been handed a worse turd burger. And I think that they've been at least more active to try and figure out solutions for it. Saint saying you agree with Coach Easy. Prefer more mature and experienced player? Yeah, absolutely. Matt saying odds your man Sanborn makes the squad. I'll spoil that for you now. I think he makes it. Everybody just wants the person who's like, go get that guy. He'll make a difference when they go on social media. Yeah, we'll see. See what happens. I would love to see Denzel Mims as a Bear. I'm not going to be shy about saying that, but I don't know what I'd trade for him. I wouldn't want to give a lot, and I don't think it's going to happen. So we'll see. And everybody says, well, just wait to pick him up when he's cut. Maybe. He may be cut, but if you're going to listen to a report from Ian Rappaport saying that he's on the trade block via the agent's report, I would also listen to Ian when he says teams are going to be interested. That's the exact reason where everybody's like, yeah, go ahead and acquire Mims. Throw a 7th-round pick at him from next year. And I'm going, if there's competition, they're going to drive that price up to say, no, it's not a 7th. It's not a conditional 7th. It's a 6th. It's a 5th. And if that's the case, I don't think the Bears are in it. Who's doing a better job, Daboll or Flukes? That's a great question. I will go ahead and tell you I think Eberflus is doing an admirable job. I think Daboll's let me put it this way, Cliff, and I know you're asking me as the guy that watches the NFL, and you're going to find me biased a little bit. I like Brian Daboll. I don't think I've seen anything that he's done that's extremely wrong. I actually like a lot of the things that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane have done in New York. And some of them didn't make sense to the outside. Like, why would you take Wan'Dale Robinson in the second? I didn't love that pick either. Alec Pierce and all these others were on the board. He's their Isaiah McKenzie. And I know you'd go, well, but he's small and he's a slot only. Yeah, I get it. But if I can show you in Buffalo where that archetype worked and how effective they were with Daboll as the play caller, I'm not going to sit here and chastise the guy for selecting their version of Isaiah McKenzie this year. Russell saying Danny Gray is a stud. Yes, he is. Danny Gray is going to be a problem in week 1 for the Bears if they don't be careful. I don't know if you've spoken. What's your biggest worry on the D-line? Biggest worry on the D-line? That's a good question. Okay, I'll feed it to you. I think it's 3-tech penetration. I think Justin Jones can be the guy, but this defense runs on a lot of different things. But one of those is being, and this was kind of my argument with Danny, except when you're in a chat room and I'm not on the Bear Debate, I can't expand on this. The defensive line is an even front. You have 2 defensive ends. You have 2 D tackles. One's a 3-tech, one's a 1-tech. If you're setting the 3-tech to the weak side of the defense, you're in an under front. If you're setting the 3-tech to the strong side of the defense, you're in an over front. Your 3-tech is the guy that wants to penetrate through the back door. Your 1-tech is the guy that's accepting your double team blocks and eat space. That's what I was trying to tell Danny is, look, oh, man, he's getting pushed off the ball. Yeah, do I wish Tonga wasn't getting pushed off the ball? Absolutely. If he's getting pushed off the ball with one man that's not Quentin Nelson or an all-star guard, fine. I'll take the criticism. But if I have 2 men pushing back on Tonga, that's a losing business model for Tonga. I'm not going to blame him for getting pushed back with two 300-pound men pushing on him. Now I have to ask my 3-tech on the other side or one of my backers or something to cut off on the backside of the play. So when you ask that, Fochese, I think my thing is if Justin Jones doesn't produce that way, who's going to be the athletic penetrator at 3-tech? That's why I was so high on a guy like Thomas Booker for being that depth piece that you build and develop. Bears skill level's on par with all the teams in our division. We'll see. We'll see, Cornelius. I think that I put something out this week that I was saying, and I'll pose this to you, Chad. If you want to answer it, please feel free. If we're talking about week 2, and I can do this with the Vikings, I can do this with the Lions. Of course, those teams differ a little bit, but I'll use the division winner. It's week 2. The Bears are on offense. They've got 11 personnel out there. It's Mooney, it's Velus, it's Equinemius St. Brown, and then you have Cole Kmet and Montgomery. Those are your 5 skill players. So let's just go. And I'm not telling you that the Green Bay defense will do this, but I'll just give you a good example because this is how I think that you could play it. We're going to play it the New England style coverage. So your best receiver, Darnell Mooney, he's going to be covered by my number 2 corner with a bracket over the top with a safety. So in that case, I'm going to put Eric Stokes or Rasul Douglas. I'll just say Eric Stokes. And then we'll put Darnell Savage over the top on Mooney. Okay, well, Equinemius St. Brown is getting my number 1 corner. That's Jair Alexander. Or if, in this case here, I'll play it a little different because, Velus is a burner. So I'll put Jair in the slot on Velus. That's done. Then I have Rasul Douglas, big on big. He's going to play against the receiver that he knows very well from his year last year. He's going to take ESB. Then I have Kmet. He's getting manned up by Adrian Amos. And then I have Quay Walker that's taking Montgomery. Who are you throwing to? Who are you sitting there telling me that's a good business model? I think my Bears player is going to absolutely beat that Green Bay defender every time. That's what I mean when I say that there's a talent deficiency on this team. Because I'm telling you, Green Bay, I can do that with many times. I can do that with the Eagles. I can do it with the Vikings. Lewis Seen can man up anybody. Harrison Smith can man up Kmet. You've got Andrew Booth, who can take Darnell Mooney, or Patrick Peterson, who's still an athlete even at this age. You can go through that, and I'd love to know who you always are going to say, this Bears player is always going to come out on top of that guy. I think that's what I talk about when I say that the talent is questionable at the moment. Would I trade Mario Edwards from Mims? I wouldn't. I think Mario Edwards has a good role on the team. I don't think we've seen him play yet, but I think that he's been disruptive enough. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a play there, Cliff. I think Angelo Blackson's a fun player that does quite a few good things. If they really were sold on Blackson being a player for them and Edwards, for whatever reason, he's in a doghouse, he hasn't been playing, then sure. But I think Mario Edwards has got a role in this team as an edge player, but also a guy that can flex in and play 3-tech. King think Poles cares about trading later on. Yeah, sure. I mean, the thing is, too, is that Poles is a guy that's clearly been selecting guys that are cast off or they have something to prove. Mims does fit that in a way, but I don't know if it's quite the same as that first rounder. And N'Keal Harry, who is on a fringe, is really disappointed. It's more of a, hey, I just haven't been given a fair chance is what Mims is playing in New York. And I think that's true. I don't think that they've been giving him a totally fair chance. You think Mario Edwards gets traded for a 6th or a 7th. Interesting. Jay is saying Trey Lance was awful. I have to let you guys in on a little secret here. Like, this has been a little bit of a nightmare of a day with work and everything. I'm trying to just freestyle this. We're going to go through chat. I'll talk about some topics. I have some film to go through. We're going to try that live, or I'm going to have to share a screen and go through it in the recording of the Prime Video. But we'll try it, and we'll see if we can go through the tape and see what we're saying. No one makes trades at this point. That's not always true, St. Omni, but I agree. I think that they become less and less, and then they heat up a little bit towards the trade deadline. I was wondering what you think of Soup's replacement. I think mental health is important. I'm a little bit about me. I'm actually been, not exactly great in the mental health department recently, but I think that mental health is important. And look, at the end of the day, we've heard numerous times that Ryan Poles and Eberflus have come in and said, you're either on the train going in the direction we want to go, or you need to get the hell out of Hallis Hall. And it sounds like maybe Soup Campbell was a guy that wasn't all on board. And Poles thought he had a better idea, and we'll see how that plays. Your thoughts on putting a spy on Lance? Yeah, I think that that's going to be necessary. You saw him running around a lot on boots, and he can kind of create. But I also saw a guy that got rattled when there was somebody in his face. So I think it's important. I think Poles will make a few moves after cuts. I think it's 27. Yeah, we'll see. I think that you're going to – this is very normal, especially with these teams that are trying to just scrap talent that's not fitting for new guys. I think you will see some of that, Jeremy. St. Omni. Trust me, I know about Trey. Yeah, I know. You were trying to call around and ask if, Rokon could get traded, and shame on you for not following the rules. They had to call your ass out. Next year we get a stud. Yeah, I hope it's Jalen Carter, Bear Truth. Pound the table for Danny Gray and Danny Shimon. Yep. Danny Shimon, I love the guy. And this is the fun part. We don't always have to agree on prospects, on positional value, on any of that. So, some people are gonna like it, some are not. Let me move along. Scheme play call is gonna. Yeah, this is to and let me go back on that for just a second. I'm not trying to sell you some super down and out. The Bears are going to be awful. Just that they are punching at a disadvantage talent wise. That doesn't mean that they're going to lose every game. They actually have a very forgiving schedule. What you have to hope is that the competency with the coaching and the professionalism and the discipline and the free plays where you've got Justin trying to get guys jumping off sides for a free play from the cadence to punching the ball out to all of that stuff that you're seeing. You're hoping that that is the stuff that fills the gap between the talent discrepancy. And that's the part where I'm not ready to tell you that the Bears are going to be awful. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're winning 11 to 12 games the way I was a few months ago, now that I've seen more of a clear picture of the way that this team has been built. And because of that, I'm just going to take this wait and see approach, but I will stand firm that I don't think the talent is equitable to many of the teams that they're going to see. But I also will tell you, I know the one thing I'm certain about is I know what this defense, this culture looks like, because I've seen it in Indianapolis the last 2 years. I've also seen it in Texas, in Houston last year, where that team was supposed to have a number one pick. They were going to be awful. And I watched that old Tampa 2 Lovey scheme that's so outdated still find a way to give some teams trouble. I mean, let me remind you that they beat the Colts. The Texans beat the Colts. I think they actually may have had a tough game with the Bills. Oh, another one, the Chargers. The Texans beat the Chargers. That's the Justin Herbert offense, and Lovey found a way to shut that down. So I know this defense works. I know this culture works. It's just a question of how well does it work to compensate for a talent gap, and that's what we're going to see. It showed that it worked a little bit last year in Houston. Not enough. They still had a top 3 pick, but they still won more games than they should have. So I think the Bears can steal some. Forgot about that board. Nikhil from our first round. Yep. Let's see. I'm hoping Nikhil comes back and shows something. You didn't mention Harry Griffin or Ebner as well as Jeff. Yeah. Oh, well, so this is the thing, Melanie Extraterrestrial. Sure, if you want me to sit there and name every product, but this is the whole point. We can go down the list. If you want to shoot me different permutations of the offense, name me the 4 or 5 options and then tell me who they're beating. But I'm giving you an 11 personnel look, which is 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a running back. I guess if you want to swap ESB or Valus out for Pringle, but I don't feel differently if you put Pringle or Tajay Sharp or those guys into it. That doesn't change my mind. Chubbs, I appreciate it. I know you're Mr. Fan. Like you, positive Bears. Let's go. 17-0. I'd love it. I'm not going to complain. Ebner's a mismatch problem for any defender on defense. Mark Ward. Yeah, I think he can be. I think that there's also, there's plenty of athletic running backs that cause some issues. I think you can get some chunk plays from them. But then you're telling me that Montgomery's not on the field, or, Herbert's not on the field, and we'll see. Do the best job responding to chat. Respond. Yeah, I appreciate it, Cliff. As long as you guys don't mind that we're not getting to the content, we'll get there eventually. But I like talking with you all, and I try my best to just kind of stay up with it, because look, at the end of the day, I guess I'm vain. I could talk into a mirror and talk to myself for a bit, but the reality is you guys are here to interact. I want to interact with you. Well, Getsy turn. The reality is I think you're already saying that. I don't want to say I was a Mooney hater, but I've said I don't love that Mooney didn't go up and win jump balls, and I think he's shown some of that already. So I don't know what it is, but what is, I'll make a little pun off of Jeremy's water wet. I think that there must be something in the water that Darnell Mooney's drinking to sit there and become that wide receiver one. And I certainly think Getsy's a guy, and Tyke Tolbert are guys that can develop that. Chubb saying we hope we win the Super Bowl every year. Yeah, me too. I know that there are some people that don't like when somebody says, oh, they're for sure going to lose this game, or I don't want to be that guy. I'm not telling you they're for sure going to lose games. Anything can happen. I'm not going to try to speak too much in the Green Bay game, because Aaron Rodgers could, God forbid, tear his ACL in week 1, and then it's a very different game. But if everything's mostly the same for how it looks a week or 2, 3 weeks out, I can talk a little bit about it. Yep. Okay. So as you guys want to pour in some chat, feel free. Let's talk a little bit about how the Niners looked, how the Texans looked. Russell had kind of brought this up. So let's talk about it a little bit. I have some film. We'll kind of just try it on the live where I'm trying to scrub through it, and we'll see how Prime Video takes it. And I probably won't be able to see your chat too much, but I'll try to keep my phone up to see it. But with that said, watching the Texans game versus the 49ers, some quick takeaways. They didn't have their starting tackles. Mike McGlinchey, Trent Williams were sitting out. Kittle was playing. Debo was playing. Ayuk was playing. Trey Lance was playing. Elijah Mitchell was not, but they were trying to get some of the young play in with Trey Sermon, Jeff Wilson. And then defense for the 49ers, Fred Warner wasn't in, but most of the guys were in. And then Texans, Davis Mills, the entire offense was in except for Laramie Tunsil for the Texans. And Dameon Pierce was getting some play. Dameon Pierce has been a hot rookie in camp. And then for defense, Stingley was out there. Jalen Petrie was out there. Thomas Booker. So everybody, it was by all accounts, it was a dress rehearsal, which is why I was so intent on trying to watch it and glean stuff from it, because it just so happens to be that, the Niners are going to be week 1 in Chicago. That's important. This is the last time you're going to see them. But also, the Texans, because I think everybody thinks we're going to roll through the Texans, and I don't necessarily feel like we're going to lose that game, but I think people are disrespecting the Texans. I think that there's enough there that they can be scrappy and competitive. I feel that way about Atlanta too. Okay. And then you work with Laramie on some business deals. Yes, you do, Saint. Yes, you do. I love that you're just really living this up and playing it. I appreciate it. So let me take a drink here as we let some more comments roll through. So Trey Lance did a lot of booting out, tried to get him on the move. I was surprised by how leaky the pressure was, which this has been something that not a lot of people have talked about, is the San Francisco line doesn't have Alex Mack anymore. They're starting a fourth round rookie, Spencer Burford, out of Texas San Antonio. They didn't have their tackle, so I understand, but I was watching the Texans D-line just penetrate and beat up. That 49ers line had Trey Lance, as somebody said, looking awful. I think that there's more context than that. It doesn't help when you're not playing with Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey. But I certainly didn't think he had the greatest night. I saw some areas where I was like, okay, well, maybe this – I've had a little bit of a shaky feeling about the Niners. So one thing I'm not going to back off from is that 49ers defensive line is fully capable of ruining the Bears' chances of winning that game, and or ruining Justin Fields' first opening under this new regime in the official regular season. That is how strong that defensive line is under Chris Kasurik and DeMeco Ryans. With that said, though, I also think if this line doesn't get figured out, now I think it's going to be much better with Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey. But I've also seen you can get to Trey Lance and mess with him, shake up his timing. We're going to kind of show you some of that. So that's what I gleaned from Trey Lance. Texans, Dameon Pierce looks really good in that zone scheme. Outside of a play where Davis Mills had a bobble interception in the end zone, I thought he actually did a decent job. There was a lot of penalties. That goes to show Cliff will kind of rehash it a few times throughout the show. Eberflus, this entire team seems very disciplined, not a lot of penalties, not a lot of stupid mental errors from what we can see on the film. So I think it's positive. Chubb saying you try to be optimistic. Yeah, I think, look, everybody fan how they want to fan. If you're optimistic, if you're skeptical, I think it's all fair game. It's however you want to be a fan. Don't you think Tonga is underrated athletically? People act like, yeah, I'm a big fan of Tonga. I'm going to continue to poke at Daddy a little bit because I like Daddy. I just like he was giving me shots about, I can't believe he doesn't agree with me that Daddy was saying Tonga could be a surprise cut. I don't work for House. I don't work for Ryan Poles. I'm the same as you guys. I will wait and see. But I am high on Tonga. I don't think Tonga will be cut. He was saying that he would prefer Mike Pennell over Tonga, and we'll see. Sane over here talking about Scissor with all that Roquan money. JB, thank you. So we move along. Shirley Temple's purple drink. You guys are ridiculous, but I love it. Can the Niners handle multiple screens? 2 fingers of scotch in it. Little shout out to Aaron Rodgers. Well, Bearman, you like St. Omni, you like Tonga as well. Yes, me too. Yes, Cliff lost a lot of games last year from penalties, so I think that the Bears are going to be much more tight. And the thing I've continued to say is that at the end of the day, they're going to be a tough out. Like, you pack your hard hat, you pack your lunch when you're coming to play the Bears. I don't think that they're necessarily the most intimidating team coming off the bus, but like, damn it, dude, it could be 28-3. And the game's almost over, and I'm just whispering to my guy, and I joke because, this was like this in high school. You'd occasionally have those practices where, look, there's 10 minutes left. Hey, do you just want to go easy here? You just want to, get out, and we don't have to go hard. Coach is not going to notice. That's the type of stuff where the Bears are going to be like, no, dude, this is an all-out game. We play 60 minutes hard, 100%. There's no loafing, and that is the type of team that I think opposing teams are going to be like, this team's just a pain in the ass. They're a pain to deal with, a nightmare to deal with. They're frustrating to play. So I think that's what the Bears are going to be. Melanaid saying, yeah, 100%. Yeah, the 49ers defensive line is nothing to blow over. So let's try this now, and I'm not promising great results, but let's give it a go. So you're going to get the inception view for a minute where I share my screen and it goes like this. And then we're going to try this out. Let me pull up my phone. I presume you can all see this, but go ahead and let me know if you can. And like I said, I presume you guys will. Did Lovey get out of the bus running, Jordan? I don't know, but we'll see. So I know you guys can see me here. Give me a thumbs up. I see a Niner. Okay, perfect. Cool. So let me get my pen here because we're going to try this whole thing, but let me see what you capture. And I don't know how clean it'll be coming through, but I'll try it out.
2 games last season, 1-1, with 603 yards and 168 on the ground. So he can run. He gives you a different set of skills and talent than does Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, as a defensive coordinator, you have got to be aware of the arm strength and the ability to create and what kind of defense you call.
I guess we can kind of just show you a little bit here. This is the first play of the game. So you're talking about this would be your 21 personnel fullback here, Ayuk there, Debo there. As far as defense, you've got your even front D-end. Your 3 tech is here. Your 1 tech is here in the A-gap. So in this case, this is what we're talking about where you have this is an over front because your 3 tech is on the strong side around this tight end. And then you've got a bigger box. You're a +1 in the box because you are single high, middle of the field closed, off coverage here. This looks like it would likely be a cover 3. Kind of zooming back here. And then you have what are probably ultimately some just zone droppers here. Maybe you may send 1. But that's what the defense looks like. So, I'm losing my pen like a real rookie. So as we go through here, let's wipe it out. Let's see. Control Shift 5. Okay, and then let's just hit all these up here. And then we'll roll the tape. And if I lose it at any time, just put in the chat that the stream is lost video, and I'll stop and it'll come back. And I apologize. I'm trying to draw on it. Hopefully it stops it from overreacting, but let's go through.
Starting the trip, but keeping his footing, still gaining only one, is Jeff Wilson.
This is why I say where I laugh, because it wants to give me a little bit of a problem.
Mitchell, who won't play tonight, figures to be the starter in the open.
Can we?
The ability to
There we
create
go.
what kind of defense you call will depend on how he's playing with his legs.
So as we see here, and I know it's blurry, but we'll deal. And I love that Amazon likes to do that. where it
Series
kind of
tonight,
blocks
starting
it.
the trip, keeping his footing, still gaining only one, is Jeff.
So we'll back it up here, and as you can kind of see, what you end up getting here is a wide zone where everybody's moving this way. And you're ultimately trying to wall everybody off here, where you'll have the tight end coming up here, tackle coming here, guard reaching up here, center going here. And what you end up getting is a wide zone that actually gets stopped because you have your defenders flushing over the top here in a way to stop the run here for little gain. So let's wipe all this off. And then let's show you the play. And I apologize. I know Amazon Prime, where I'm just kind of replaying this from, it likes to do this thing where if I pause it, it black screens it. So I apologize.
Will depend on how he's playing with his legs and arm.
Probably a couple of series tonight, starting the trip, but keeping his footing, still gaining only one, is Jeff Wilson, one of a bevy of 49er running backs, even though Elijah Mitchell, who won't play tonight, figures to be the starter in the opener.
I think with Trey Lance, one thing about him, he's known for his poise. And I talked about in the open how there's a tendency to want to press. And, you're amped up, you're a competitor, you want to make plays.
Sorry, just trying to read your comments here.
He's really changed his
go
throwing
through.
motion a little, trying to get the ball out a little bit quicker. But it is.
All right, so as we get here, let's draw it up again. So in this case, this is that 11 personnel that we're talking about. You're tight. Oh, come on.
It's about running the ball and hitting the play action pass.
Son of a gun.
Plays. They said he's had a great camp. He's really changed his throwing motion a little, trying to get the ball out a little bit quicker. But
so this is your tight end here, your slot here. And this is funny how they actually do this. And this is why I love Kyle Shanahan. You want to talk about guys that just get a little exotic. And this is preseason, so they're not rolling it all out, but you're already seeing it. Kind of funny here. Up here is Kyle Juszczyk. It's KJ. You've got Debo here in the slot. You've got Kittle here. I'll just go GK. Everybody knows that. I believe this is Jeff Wilson. And then you actually have Ayuk over here. That's your 11 personnel. And then I could be wrong, but I believe that they boot off of this. And I actually believe that they boot him out here. If not, we're going to be seeing that soon. As far as defense, you're actually seeing a little bit more of this where you actually have what looks to be your 2 high because you have your 4 down here, your 3 here. That's 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you obviously have somebody here. So what you probably have here is your safeties that are just kind of one's playing closer to the box, but that's ultimately how that looks. And I apologize. I know it's kind of sloppy as we kind of go through it on the fly, but I don't know where you're probably going to get too much film review this soon after, but I'll have to cut up film and just kind of show it to you. So, and I'll try to pause periodically and go through your comments as we go here. Let's rewind it. Come on, Amazon. Stop playing games with me. You're going to make me reboot. Let's see. You are. Okay. Well, then I'm going to stop sharing for a second while I try to get this working. And then we will go from there. Let's show your comments and get through them. guess it'll stop the stream from cutting out. Let's see here. Oh, the fun. The fun, the fun. Well, let's see. I take it you can still hear me. Okay, you can still hear me. That's cool. What you're dealing with now is that my Edge, my web browser, is sitting there telling me that it is not responding, so I'm waiting for it to respond. Surely my computer does not love me streaming film on the live and trying to stream it onto StreamYard. But let's go through your comments as I work to see if this can get fixed. Jordan, why did the Niners pass on Fields to take Lance? It's a great question, Cliff. I don't know why. If I were them, I would have taken Fields. I would have thought that Fields would have been the ideal player for Kyle Shanahan, but I think that they may have liked that Steve McNair, bigger, thick build. Justin Fields, to me, is much more RG3 as a runner than Malik Willis or Lamar Jackson, a little bit of a thicker run style. And Trey Lance, make no mistake about it, he's kind of a brick shit house. He's a big guy, can really absorb some punishment and run the ball. You can run power with him. I wouldn't necessarily want to run power bash with Justin Fields. Bear Truth was saying you're recording and watching the game. Let's see. This just does not want to work. Oh, the fun as it's cutting down. Yeah, and I apologize. I know it totally went out there, but we are back. Let me go ahead and, as it's doing some weird, let's remove. Forgive me here. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. You got to love when that happens. But I am back. Let's try this again. Give me a second to get it going.
Football, a sport rich.
This is always fun. This is like the worst podcasting ever where I'm scrubbing through a game to try to get us back to where we were. But apologies ahead of time. I think that this is valuable if we can kind of glean something about the 49ers and the Texans in that respect. I guess I didn't get to talk too much about the other players. I am surprised by Brock Purdy. He was your Mr. Irrelevant this year. It's between him and Sudfeld as the backup quarterbacks in that game. And I thought that at the end of the day, I was really impressed with the way Brock Purdy's played this preseason. And I would hope that he's not cut or he's given an opportunity to rise above Nate Sudfeld. Beyond that, like Davis Mills, I said that, like Thomas Booker, like Damian Pierce. Jalen Petrie was a maniac out there. I really liked what I saw from him. Cliff saying, yeah, it always F's up when people are watching. Yes, it does. Okay, let me kind of go back through as I cut through this. Let's see where we're at. Can we get the kickoff? Maybe. They had this whole pregame, so I'm scrubbing through. And I guess we could talk a little bit about that. I'll vamp a little bit as I'm strolling through this. I thought it was quite interesting to see. Greg Gabriel was a little bit harsh on this broadcast, and I didn't think it was perfect. I'm actually a huge Al Michaels fan. It was interesting. I'm a little sad to hear that, he and Chris Collinsworth are no longer doing it together. What you've actually seen is Kirk Herbstreit and Al Michaels doing it, and I'm a little bit bummed because I loved the original NBC. I'm a big Peacock fan. That's probably my favorite broadcast is the NBC Sunday Night Football. But ultimately, Greg Gabriel's kind of harsh, said it looked pre-recorded. I didn't think it was a great, broadcast, but I thought that at the end of the day, this is one of their first shows. Give it time before you say that, Amazon Prime or Fox with the new guys or any of that. Let's see how they gel. I'd say you can probably fairly assess after week 6, week 7. So as I kind of go through here, as Angelo Blackson's funny. Angelo Blackson is a very interesting player. You want to talk about a guy I have a crush on beyond Tevin Jenkins is Christian Wilkins. a lot of Niners fans at the time when Roquan Smith was declaring they wanted to trade, they wanted Roquan Smith so bad. And I have quite a few Dolphins fans I like to mess with. And I was saying I would need Christian Wilkins back, because Christian Wilkins to me is the closest thing to Akeem Hicks. He's only the only guy I've comped to Akeem Hicks that's come out of the draft in the last few years. Jeremy, let's see the reason why Kyle Shanahan will get fired. You're awful. In a good way. I'm playing with you, but I don't have anything against Trey Lance. I just think that, we'll see what happens. I think that he's going to make some very special plays this year. Very much still a rookie, though. Let's be clear about that. I think that he still has a long way to go. I'm worried about how little he's played in the last 2-3 years. For dinner, yes. Bears are playing on Saturday, which scares the shit out of me. I totally didn't remember that. I'm going, oh, yeah, we'll do it Saturday. But I guess in some ways I'm not doing a show this Saturday. I'll do it next. Fields fallen in the draft. Yes, it was a perfect storm. I have no idea how he got to 11. I think he should still be a Carolina Panther, but I'm not going to complain. Justin Fields as a Bear is a wonderful thing. Trey Sermon looks like a bad pick. I think that's early, Cliff. I'm not going to say that Trey Sermon looks bad after 1 year. I actually loved Trey Sermon when he was playing with Fields at Ohio State. I tell you what, if he got cut, I would love for them to pick him up. That's how high I was on Trey Sermon. I just think it's a scenario where it's hard to break into that Shanahan offense. He's a very unique guy where one day you're in his doghouse, the other day you're fine. I would have never guessed that Elijah Mitchell would have been the lead ball carrier there last year, but things happen. Say that Bears will bring a lot of the same concept. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Melanated extraterrestrial. Look, fuck it. It's my show. I'm going to shamelessly plug. Episode 2 of Bear Necessities, I went over Fluce's defense last year, 7 or 8 games, showing exotic concepts to show that it's not your standard Tony Dungy, Monty Kiffin, Lovey 2, Tampa 2 cover defense. It's really got some unique concepts in it, and I would advise that if anybody wants to know a little bit more about what this defense looks like, how it's a little more exotic and different, and I guess you would say a little bit more sophisticated, I think I covered that pretty well. Hard to confuse Lance. He needs to see some. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of that when I'm talking about Jeremy, where he's got to play a lot more, and I think some of that will start to come. So move along here. I'll start to catch up before we go back to the stream. One read, then run guy. J-Rock is saying some of that, but I mean, he's got some good plays. Lance just looks lost. He's got an arm and running ability. We'll see. I think that we're being far too harsh, in my opinion. Kyle Shanahan's a guy that's able to extract – the Shanahans in general are able to extract good play from Robert Griffin to, Matt Schaub. I mean, look, J2K, and I'm not picking on you totally, but here's a good example. We can say that Lance looks lost, and he may be. This is what we need to see. But I watched Kyle Shanahan turn C.J. Beathard and Nick Mullins into guys that are still hanging around in the league because of what Kyle Shanahan extracted from them. I think that Kyle Shanahan's never had a quarterback with this many tools and this much talent. He is in the molding phase, but if he's been able to mold and get stuff out of guys like Nick Mullins, I certainly think he can pull stuff out of Trey Lance. Jeremy saying, what's the biggest weakness on the team? I thought O-line. But to me, O-line is – I care about keeping my quarterback clean. I care about keeping him upright. I think that if Fields is going to fail, it's because he doesn't have a chance to read the field and get the ball out to the guy that he wants. And so to me, offensive line is of the utmost importance. Renewable. I think that Pace did think that this would be a reset button. If I can select my quarterback, they may give me a few more years, and it didn't work. Pace said he drafted a QB. Yeah, well, you'll see what things that you say and you do are different. I think you're going to hear a lot of things from polls this year. And I think that some of that may change as soon as he's got kind of the keys to the castle a little bit more, and he's not on somewhat of a probationary period trying to figure it out. You're going to see a lot of that now that he's cleared the decks, and next year it's really the polls show and he can spend where he wants. You may see him go back on a few things or a few creeds or tenets that he has. You may not like this, but Kyle Shanahan's a better version of Nagy. He wants to run his players. He wants players to run. Yeah, Cliff. Boy, maybe I'll do a show. We'll do the show on this because I could talk about this for hours. I have legitimate concerns about what this offense does to quarterbacks. This Shanahan, McVay offense, this wide zone. Hey, it's good for Justin Fields. They're going to put training wheels on him this year.
But this has always been an offense that says, I'm the play caller, I'm the captain. You're just the quarterback. You're a chess piece. You do what I tell you, and I'm the star of the show. And that's great for Matt Schaub, for Nick Mullins. But what does that look like when you have a guy as talented as Justin Fields, and I've got a coach that says, no, Justin, you're not the star, I am. And we'll see how that affects his development. I'm curious. Niners' biggest weakness will likely, I agree. I think that A-gap is going to be real nice and pretty. So as we say that, let me take a drink, and we will try to go back to some film. As we'll see. With my luck, it'll probably just crap out again, but I'll try it. Okay, so a little more Inception. I don't know why it does this, but it does. So let's try this. And then here we are. Let's go full screen.
What kind of defense you call?
This is just that first play all over again.
Probably a couple of series tonight, starting to trip, but keeping his footing, still gaining only one. Is Jeff
As we said, this next play is 11 personnel. Debo's in the slot. They put their fullback, Kyle Juszczyk, out wide.
With Trey Lance, one thing about him, he's known for his poise, and I talked about in the open, a bit quicker, but in this offense, it's about running the ball and hitting the play action.
And you can actually, I'll pause it here just to show you. We were talking about defense last time I stopped. You've got a too-high shell here. Presumably, you may get a quarters look, but your safeties are over here, and they may buzz out here. You may have a safety buzz down, but a too-high look. And so, theoretically, the Texans are light in the box here. You have a bubble. Right now, your bubble is here, but your linebacker can fill that. And you've got a bubble here, but you're missing that third guy to fill this bubble out here or out here. If your defensive lineman slants in, you need a guy here. That is the whole idea of too high shell. You are down a man in the box. So if you're facing too high safeties, you are at an advantage if you want to sit there and run the ball. And that's the whole idea is, look, we're in a league right now where this is in vogue. Let's have two guys deep. We're going to put a roof on the top of your offense, not allow big plays. And that's fine. You want to limit explosive plays, but if I'm an offense, then fine. I'm going to gash you and just bust through runs to force one of these guys to come up, and then I'm going to shoot Justin Fields out here on the play action, and I'm going to try to hit an alert deep. That is the ideal way of trying to beat middle of the field open, or you get guys that can run after the catch, which is Ebner, which is Valus, which is Mooney. Fine, if you're going to put this shell on me, then let's go ahead and move it to a position where I can hit a crosser here, I can throw a screen here, and sure, you're over here, but I've got all this room to work and create some yardage. So let's see. Ooh, that does it. Okay. So move along here.
Second down and 8.
If this is that boot.
Rolling right, being chased, fires on the money. That's the game's first.
It was funny because I was telling you about the fullback Kyle Juszczyk being out wide. That's somewhat of a very unique formation. What I find so interesting here is that this is that bootleg, and I guess they're going to talk about it here on the broadcast, so I'll let you do it. But this is something that I'll back it up a bit. I want to talk about it. This is something that we're seeing defensive coordinators really start to hone in on. And I bring this up because this is Lovey. This is the Eberflus mentor in many ways via Rod Marinelli. If the Bears are going to do this, I think that this is a mistake. So something that you're seeing here is happening. Let me make sure that the Jordan blank screen. God damn it. Okay, give me a second. These sons of guns. Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize that till just now. And now it comes back. You sons of guns, YouTube. Let me I don't know how much this I will try to continue to do this because I don't know how much YouTube's gonna do it, but I will try again. We'll see. And I'll try to draw on it I don't know how the algorithm works, but I would hope that drawing on it shows that it's not totally copyrighted, but fuck it. we'll continue. So we'll do it live. Okay. And I'll try to keep it. I have it running on my phone, so I'll try my best to kind of see when that black screen goes. So as we were showing here, we are at a position where the fullback's out here. The way defensive coordinators, I see a black screen. I'm waiting to see, do you get to? Hold your, golly, they are really blocking my shit out. Okay. God damn it. All right, fine. Okay, that's a decent idea, J2K. I guess I can do that. YouTube really does suck. Sons of guns. Okay. I will do one screen snip, and then I guess I can show you guys that. That's a decent option, J2K. Boy, YouTube and streaming is fun when you're just trying to be educational and show stuff, but they don't want to let you. Wow, are they really trying to stop that too? Dare I say, J2K, that they are, yeah, okay, so there's the confirmation. J2K, I'm sorry, chat, I will have to stop. I even tried to screen snip it, and Windows/Amazon must know it's copyrighted material. I tried to screen snip, and it shows that the screen goes black to ensure that I can't use it. So anyway, Richard Paget, you say that you're a Niners fan. I guess I can talk about it a little bit, and we'll, yes, for Cliff's sake, pretend it's radio just to subscribe. Just describe it, sure. So in many ways, what you're seeing now, and I'll try this a little bit, and then we can move on from it, and I'll just move on to the topics of who's making the 53, things like that, and maybe what I need to do, and this is the problem. This is why, hey, Thursdays are not a good thing. We'll do it Saturdays, because then I could do Thursday film, cut it up, draw over it, and we don't get black screens. But basically what we're looking at, and I don't know if the Bears are going to do this. Hopefully they don't. But the way that defensive coordinators are teaching how to deal with this wide zone rollout is what you're seeing happen is you have your backside playing D-end, the guy that's weak side where the play is going opposite from. So traditionally, the way football's been coached is if you're the backside defensive end, you run down the line and you chase the play backside. Well, what's been happening is that you have quarterbacks in this wide zone scheme off play action, off naked boots, where the defensive end will chase the running back backside only for the quarterback to naked boot and escape out the back door. And now there's no containment because the defensive end is chasing the backside of the play. So what's happening here is that you're having guys like a Justin Fields, a Trey Lance, where because this is happening where they're escaping with no containment, you now have more modern defensive coordinators saying, screw it. Backside defensive end, do not chase down the running back. Do not sit there and try to stop a 3-yard gain. If they get the 3-yard gain, screw it. Let them have it. But what I want you to do, and Jordan Jimenez, let's just watch it through my glasses. I'm sorry, I got to have light here, and I guess I can maybe turn some of this down. But it's a situation where essentially you've had these quarterbacks escaping and not having a D-end to contain it, that you've now had more modern defensive coordinators say, screw it, let them have the 2-3 free yards. I'd rather you as a defensive end forget about chasing the backside of the play, go directly for the quarterback just in case the quarterback decides to keep it on a naked bootleg, so that by the time that he's done faking the handoff and turning around, you're in his face disrupting the play. And what I didn't get to show you in that was that in that play, under the Lovey scheme, that's why I'm saying we'll see if the Bears do this, the defensive end, Jonathan Grenard, ends up biting a little bit on following the run fake. And because he takes a bad angle, Trey is able to escape out and buy extra time to hit use check on the curl, on the perimeter. And what you're hoping to see is a guy like Al-Qadim Muhammad, Travis Gibson, Robert Quinn say, screw that. I trust Roquan. I trust Nick Morrow. I trust Tonga. I trust all these other guys to stuff the run on the play side if it's a run. But I'm going directly for Trey Lance or that guy on the naked boot so that either A, I get a free sack, or I disrupt him to where he doesn't have the time to read the defense, because as soon as he turns around, I'm in his face. And that is something that you're seeing defenses start to do and say, screw it, give up the small play. But we're not going to allow that play action pass, that naked bootleg, to beat us. And so that was something that you saw there. And I'm hoping that, obviously, that's Lovey's defense. That's just, and it's not even like Lovey's telling him, don't go for the play action. That's hard. I played defensive end. As a defensive end, I'm taught, like, hey, be active in the play. Don't loaf, chase it down. And now you're having to retrain your brain that at the end of the day, I think it's a run. It looks like a run. I'm watching offensive linemen push down the line. And I think I know what I'm seeing, only to go, oh, crap, I'm over here. And now the quarterback's, rolling out back over there. We have a problem. So outside of that, Trey Lance, I didn't get to show it too much, but Trey Lance looked very uncomfortable throughout the night on rollouts, where I don't know if guys just weren't getting open. There was a lot of pressure because those tackles weren't there, but he looked relatively average. I want to say he had like 70 or 80 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, but that was his night. I am somewhat more bullish on the Lovie Smith-led Texans than most people realize. Jordan, do you have a mirror? YouTube doesn't understand mirrors. I wish. Jeremy, I hope Fields boots out too. I think that, to Cliff's point, he's going to be creative. If there's one thing, I don't want to say that nobody knows what this offense is going to look like in regular season. But I'll tell you what, I'll take being told that I'm totally wrong and don't know what I'm talking about and need to shut up if I'm wrong on this. But I feel very comfortable in saying you've seen a lot of what this offense is going to look like. And I know that could be discouraging to some to say, well, they haven't found the end zone. I think that you're going to see much more of as Jeremy's saying, the bread and butter of play action pass and this bootlegs, naked rollouts, levels concepts. Hey, Fields, just read half of the field. We're going to give you half field reads. It's going to be sail concepts, flood, levels, scat plays where essentially you have your inside hitch, a corner, and then a little bubble or a flat. I think that you're going to have these half-field reads, and they're going to make it – this is what I'm talking about, training wheels for a guy that's essentially still a rookie because of how badly he was coached and supported and developed in his first year, that in many ways, all the good plays you're seeing from the Bears, I think you're going to see more of. And yes, some of those – I'm not – because under that logic, the Bears are just all of a sudden going to be awesome. I'm not telling you that's how it's going to work, but you're going to have all those wide zone runs. You're going to have some cutbacks. You're going to have some counters, but you're going to see a ton of pre-snap motion. You're going to see dedicated jet sweeps and screens and dedicated touches for guys like Velus Jones. I think you're going to see Cole Kmet get a lot of work as a security blanket for Justin Fields. And I think that you're going to get a lot of these, I don't want to say money concepts, but it's hard to lose on him. The idea here is I'm going to boot Justin Fields out. That way the offensive line doesn't have to hold up. Justin Fields is out, and you've had to ask the defensive line to chase after him now. And then he has to just read half the field, and it's all in front of him. Go flat, go middle, or hit the alert. And I think that that's really what this offense is going to look like. And I think that it's going to have more success than a lot of people realize. And when I say a lot of people, not you Barflies, obviously we're Bears fans. We think it's going to work. But a lot of the media that assume the Bears are incompetent or are about to have a top 3 draft pick, which, boy, I hope we're all saving those receipts and get to throw them, because I'll take an L if they get a top 2 or 3 draft pick. But I was laughing when you had people like PFF guaranteeing that the Bears are going to have a top 3 draft pick months ago, not seeing the full process yet. We're not seeing the Bears run game yet. And absolutely, Cliff. That's a great point. You're going to see the most basic runs. And that is really, people always wonder, well, how hard is it to stop a bootleg or to stop a flood concept? It's not. But the problem is, this is what I was trying to show, and I don't remember what was blacked out and what wasn't. But if you're going to play those 2 high safeties, I want to run the ball down your throat because I'm at an advantage. You're -1 in the box. And if I'm beating the hell out of you with my run game, which is what we're talking about, Cliff, that's how these easier concepts work, because you've got a defense tired. They're chasing the quarterback. They don't know what's going on because there's a lot of deception and pre-snap motion. And then all of a sudden we're tired because you're just running it down our throat. And then before you know it, you've got Justin Fields booting out of the back door and Darnell Mooney or Velus Jones or somebody's on a 20-yard crossing route, deep to middle dig, deep to middle over route, and all of a sudden you're deflating a defense because not only have we been gashed for 35 yards on the ground now, Justin Fields just hit a 25-yard pass, and this just sucks. This is wearing down on us. And I think that's what you're going to see. Toa, appreciate you hanging out. Barroom doesn't sleep. I don't sleep, unfortunately, but this is the way this goes. Thank you for hanging out. More screens and more PA rollouts will help Fields. Yeah, absolutely. What I'm most interested to see, you want to talk about something we haven't seen that I'm dying to see. I hope that they don't strip it. I'll be honest, I've been less than impressed with Fields' running ability last year, but I'm desperately hoping that they allow Justin Fields on that. Look, it's going to be, you're not going to get all the wild exotic runs that Lamar Jackson or even Josh Allen has. But if you're going to run this zone scheme, then what you do have is zone read options. And that's what I'm excited is RPOs off of that and actually quarterback designed runs where we're faking the zone read only for Justin Fields to take it. And you're creating conflict on that defensive end or that overhang defender. Moving along. Does this offense ever take long shots downfield? Yeah, well, this is Jay Sanders, to your point. There's always a long shot down the field planned in these routes. It's called the alert. And really what those are is they're free plays. If we can get somebody to jump off, or if we're creating conflict where somebody doesn't have discipline and we've got these over routes, and let's say, for example, you've got Mooney on an over route and Equinemius St. Brown running deep, and that safety for some reason has a brain fart and doesn't take the vertical responsibility and flies down and buzzes down to Mooney. That deep shot is open. That's your alert. And that's the whole point of why it's called alert. Like, hey, Justin, be alert. It's there. Hit it. You've got a 65-yard touchdown. So this is the whole point of this offense is right now, I was talking about it earlier, I think the Bears are talent deficient in a lot of ways. So they need every little inch that they can get, from offsides penalties to playing discipline to cheap yardage and design screens and things of that sort. And so by all means, if there's going to be free alert shots of what you're talking about, Jay Sanders, the Bears are going to try to take advantage of it. Okay. I think the backs will get a lot of passes out of the back. Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing that we're seeing, and it's beautiful, Duke, thank you for being here, is that Fields has shown an ability and a willingness to take the check down. And that's the other thing, too, is in all of these, your running back or your tight end are the little outlets that are able to hit if everything goes bad. It comes down to, is the check down open? If not, Justin, use your legs to get 5 or 6 yards. And so I think that you're going to see that. Cliff's talking a good point. You haven't seen much of Card Blossoming. Card Blossoming seems to have some hand issue. But even when he was in, they weren't showing a lot of it. I actually think he's going to be your wing player that's doing a lot of the pre-snap motion, running sift blocks, things of that sort. I think he'll have a big role. You did actually see him a little bit in that first game where they actually had him running some deep routes, which was funny enough with him. First 2 games against teams with the same offense as Bears. Yeah, well, this is the problem. And this is where I wasn't like so down on the Luke Getsy hire, but the league is cyclical. So if everybody's zagging, I wish that we were zigging. If the entire league is running middle of the field open 2 high shells, I'm going to tell you that I think there's still value to be had in running middle of the field closed single high defenses. And I think you can still find ways to thrive in that. If everybody's running the McVay offense, I tend to go, well, you know what I like? I like Greg Roman and his running offense. And I like watching Tennessee and how they run the offense. And, and obviously that was really the Arthur Smith. And now you're seeing in Atlanta where the way they're doing things. And I think you're going to see some very interesting looks out of the New York Giants this year where, yes, it's Dable, but they brought in Mike Kafka. So I think you're going to have this weird mix of what Kansas City's offense looks like with Buffalo's offense and how is that going to play. And I just think that at the end of the day, if we're just doing what everybody's doing, you're just going to get caught up to. But we'll see. Hopefully the Bears can stay ahead of pace. As long as we can run the ball and play defense, we'll be in every – yeah, I mean, that's Toa, good point. It's the reality of every football game is, for the most part, if you can stay on schedule, you're in a good spot. Foster, get the first pick in the draft. I'm taking a shit live on Swifty. Swifty, good. Swifty's my dog. I would love to see that. California people live on drugs. No, a lot of people do drugs here. I'm a nerd, guys. I'm as sober as it gets. I'm drinking melted Baja Blast Freeze, and I have a cup full of water. And when this runs out, as I'm just talking so much, my voice goes through it, then I'm going to probably call it a quits. But good news is we're moving along. Casey, thanks for hanging out. Appreciate it. As I try to catch up, I'm a few minutes behind. Okay. Not as high on Dable as I am. That's fine. To be fair, I don't think that the Giants are going to have a killer year, but you guys are going to get me in trouble. Fuck it. I'll admit it. I don't care. Right now, I feel more confident about Joe Shane and Brian Dable and what they're doing in New York than what I've seen from Ryan Poles and Luke Getsy and Coach Eberflus and all that. And the whole point is that means a lot of nothing because there's been no results yet. But as far as roster building, as far as cap management, I mean, this is what I was talking about. Is people want to say the Bears Ryan Poles got handed a shit sandwich. He did. But let's be clear. And if you don't believe me, you can go look it up. Joe Shane got a much bigger, much worse shit sandwich. As bad as Pace left the Bears, the Giants were left way worse. And sure, I guess they had our first round pick. But the reality is that you've got Daniel Jones and you've got money tied into guys like Kenny Golladay and Adoree Jackson and Blake Martinez. And I'm sitting here trying to build a team out of toothpicks and bubblegum in a much worse way than the way that the Bears have had to. And they're both bad. To be very clear, they're both bad. But if I'm sitting here trying to be fair, I'm much more, I guess I vibe. I understand. I tend to agree a little bit more with what Joe Shane and Brian Dable are trying to do. And some of that is just being active. Being active doesn't mean that you automatically get success, but as much as Ryan Poles has shredded the roster down to its studs, it's been a little slow with, what are we doing in free agency? Oh, we're waiting because the Ogunjobi situation is kind of tolling. And okay, well, now guys are gone. Hey, are we going to go get a receiver? Or, oh, okay, finally they pick up N'Keal Harry. Okay, well, are we going to settle in on the offensive line? Or no, we're still trying to figure it out a couple weeks into preseason. Meanwhile, I'm looking at what the Giants are doing, and they're trying to make frugal moves where they're bringing in a John Feliciano and a Mark Lewinsky, and they have Andrew Thomas, who's a tackle that had a rough start, but he's starting to get his footing. And they're starting to bring in, Velus Jones, sure, he's a utility guy. They brought in their utility guy in Wan'Dale Robinson, and they're trying to do little bits and pieces to turn over that roster. And I think that that's the way that I see and appreciate and vibe with a little more than Poles and Eberflus. And it doesn't mean that Poles and Eberflus are doing it wrong. They're doing it bad. It's a personal opinion on how I see or how I feel about it, if that makes sense. Okay. We thoughts on Greg Gabriel saying the will is the most important. Will is a very important position in this defense. I honestly think it's more about the three tech. If we're going to sit here and say good offensive lines and running the ball and all that win games, the game is still won up front in the trenches. And so the will doesn't play on the trenches. It's the three tech. So to me, it's the three tech. It's guys like Warren Sapp. It's guys like Tommy Harris that were really the big players, as great as in Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs were. So just a difference of opinion there. Greg Gabriel and I don't always agree, but we all see the game differently, and that's what I love. Let's go back to Double methods. Yes, Double rest in peace. And of course we have John Buffon here on the Barroom Network. Okay. Are I in LA? J-Rock, no, I know LA very well. I know Hollywood and Highland. I live in Orange County. I live in Aliso Viejo, California. Okay, and then we're talking about the roots of this defense. Everything flows to the week. Yeah, I mean, J2K, you're sure. Like I said, will is very important, but this defense, as if we're just talking about it, it's really built on a spine. It's the three tech to the will to the safety, and that's where a guy like Danny Shimon says he doesn't see the value of safeties, which I find is funny because one, safety value evaluation is through the roof. Just go look at safety spending this year with Marcus Williams and Jesse Bates and Minka Fitzpatrick and Dax Hill being taken and all these different safeties that have value. And then you consider it with what this defense is, and it's John Lynch, and it's God, I'm blanking on I want to say his name's Mike Harris. It's not Mike Harris, though. Help me out, Bear safety that was often injured. Mike Brown. I don't know why Tommy Harris, but Mike Brown. So you have a lot of safeties here that matter a lot too, but it's pick your favorite child. Is it three tech? Is it will? Is it safety? They're all very important, but to me, I'm a guy that believes that you build it through the trenches. Okay. Patience and persistence, one of your favorite models. Absolutely. Will the tight ends play a better role in this offense? Yes, absolutely. Tight ends will be a very big role in this system. And Justin Fields is going to eat off of it because the one thing that we've talked about, and Chris, thank you for hanging out. Bear down, mate. This is a situation where we've seen it where I talk about Ohio State. I love Jeremy Ruckert. They had Luke Farrell there as well beforehand. Justin Fields, especially in the red zone, especially in the goal line situation, love to pin it on his tight ends at Ohio State. And then you even saw it last year, whether it be to Jesper Horsted, Cole Kmet, Jesse James. Those situations where when it's tight, which is what I expect this defense to be, is yes, we'll take shot plays, but we're going to run it down. We're going to get some plays where we get in the gold zone, as what's his name? Denver coach Nate Hackett would call it. But I mean, the same idea, gold zone, red zone. Once we get down there, Justin Fields is going to want to pin it to his safety blankets, which he's shown a propensity to do at Ohio State and then in his rookie year. Wonder if Riley Reef is a trade candidate with him. Yeah, Lou, it's funny because I was just making some jokes on Twitter. I was joking around like, hey, we should try to trade him to the Cowboys and ask for, hey, you trade for Denzel Mims and then we'll trade you Riley Reef for Denzel Mims. But just jokes. I don't know if Reef will be traded. I think that, as I said, I think they view that as that's the bottom line of how we want our tackles to play. And as Cliff is saying, great swing tackle and starter if needed. I don't think he goes anywhere. Why are we sold on Griffin when he hasn't played yet? Yeah, it's renewable. It's a good question. Griffin's just been a steady Eddie guy. And I think that, look, when you're a roster in transition and you have some talent deficiency, sometimes you just want to, I talk about this all the time, if I can just set a guy and forget about it and move on to the next problem, that's worth something. And so with a guy like Ryan Griffin, I just put him on and I kind of know what I get. Maybe it's never going to be anything special, but it's good enough as a second tight end. And I feel comfortable that he can block a decent amount. He can catch some balls. Cole Kmet's out there. We can run 12 personnel with that. I don't feel like we have a really big drop-off at the second tight end, if that makes sense. Cliff, thank you. Yes, everybody hit the like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff for the stats on YouTube and for Barroom, Aldo and et al., myself, John Buffon, Danny Shimmer. We all appreciate it if you would support the work here that we do at Barroom. Research at Miami, Jimmy Johnson, Miami 43. Yes, absolutely. You are spot on, Jeremy. Okay. Do I think the Bears will keep 5 tight ends and 1 less receiver? I don't think that's the case. But as we go through this, we'll just kind of move along here, and I'll show you. One of the topics of the show was projecting the 53. J2K, it's 5:41 a.m. Chris, thank you for tuning in at 5, almost 6 in the morning. I appreciate it. I hope all is well over there for you, mate. As we move along, let's show this depth chart. And let's see. Give me a brief thumbs up or just a signal that you can see the depth chart. Okay. Well, I know you see the depth chart because I'm watching on my phone and I see it. And Cliff, you're saying projecting the 53 is so difficult this week. Half the guys are locks and the rest. You're right, but that's the fun in it. We're just going to have a little fun with it. So I know it's a little hard on the depth chart. If you want to follow along, you can pull up the Chicago Bears depth chart on their website as just a way to kind of have all the players in one spot. Let's start on offense. I don't think I'm shocking anybody here. I think that they're going to go with 2 quarterbacks with a roster with this much needs in a few places. I don't think that you can afford to have a 3rd quarterback. I also don't think people are going to be have a demand for Nate Peterman if he hits the market. So I think Nate Peterman is a guy that gets cut. And if they need to call him back because of injury, that's no problem. I think he'll be available. Trevor Siemian is a very quality backup in this scheme. I think he's actually, in many ways, played more steady than Justin Fields has. Granted, he's had more opportunities with playtime. But I think he's acquitted himself well and looks good. I think that you're going to see Justin Fields and Trevor Siemian as your 2 quarterbacks. Nate Peterman's out the door. We have to cut 27. So as I kind of try to keep track here of cutting 27 people, let's do that. So I'm cutting 1 with Nate Peterman. Running backs, I think, look, it's at the end of the day, I think that you'd like to have 3 running backs, but I think that you'll carry 4, particularly if Herbert's out long-term, Ebner, who's not currently practicing. Really, it's looking like you got David Montgomery and Darrington Evans and DeMontre Tuggle. I think that you're hoping that Ebner and Khalil Herbert find a way to make their way back for the season. And so you're trying to cut where you can. And so there's a situation there where I think that I would go ahead and remove DeMontre Tuggle from the roster. That's 2 players cut. Look, as much as we all love our fullbacks in Chicago, I don't think that you can have 2 fullbacks. You'd rather have an extra tight end, as Jake Tongas is. to swap over and play some fullback if Kari wasn't able to go. So I'm trying to keep this relatively brief because we could talk tons about like different players, and we will probably talk more about particular ones. But to me, Jake Tongas is another guy that I don't think makes it. I think at the end of the day, Kari Blossomgame is your starting fullback, and if you had an injury there, you can move one of your tight ends over. And Tongas is an undrafted free agent. I don't think he makes it over a guy like, let's say, a Chase Allen. Okay, taking a brief break here. Somebody's saying it looks fine. Derek, you're saying make it larger. Sure, I guess I could try to make it larger. Do you think the Bears will bring in any free agents? Chris is saying, do I think the Bears will bring in any free agents? Maybe a receiver, or is it too late? No, I think that they can bring people in, Chris. What I can't do is project who will be available. What I can do is see who's on the Bears roster and project who we would be maybe moving on from. And so in that situation, I will do that, but I wouldn't feel comfortable saying, oh, well, for sure pick up these guys, because there's no way of telling who makes whose roster unless I went through each one of those and did that. And by that rate, we'd be here until 5:41 the following day over there in England, Chris. So let me work on making this bigger so that you guys can see it a little more. Here we go. That should hopefully help a bit. Okay. So as we go here, let's go to the wide receivers. So we've done 3 players cut. That's Tongas, that's Tuggle, and that's Peterman. We've got 24 more to go. I guess I can do tight end here. Cole Kmet, I obviously think he makes it. I think that it's interesting. I think you probably keep 3 tight ends. Who that is, though, is a great question. I'm trying to see. Do I not have a – you guys are going to hate me a little bit. I have to zoom out a bit as it's not giving me – let me see. Does that allow me to see everybody? Okay, it does. So it wasn't giving me an option to see the entire depth chart after them. I think that you keep 3 tight ends in this roster of 53. That creates a little bit of a question there between a guy like Chase Allen or James O'Shaughnessy. This is hard to me because I think that, look, the vet is important, but you have the vet and Ryan Griffin, and Chase Allen was an interesting UDFA prospect. Hasn't shown a ton, but I think he's got something there. I honestly could see them trying to stash a Chase Allen on the practice squad, but I'll make this a little spicy and interesting. I think you keep Cole Kmet, Ryan Griffin as your 1 and 2, and then I think you have that Chase Allen guy that can be a receiver, can block, can, maybe you flex either him or Ryan Griffin to fullback if you had to, if Kari went out. So I am going to say we cut O'Shaughnessy out. That's 4, and we keep Chase Allen in. Moving to wide receiver, some of this is relatively easy, gentlemen. We've got Darnell Mooney, Velus Jones. Obviously, those 2 are making it. I think a guy like Equanimeous St. Brown has done enough, at least in camp from all reports, that he makes it, especially considering his familiarity in the offense and his body type, his archetype. So it's missing in this roster, a guy that's big, tall, athletic. So I think that you have 3 there. I think that you'd probably keep 5. I know that we could maybe say 6 or 7, but we've got a lot of people to cut. We've got 23 more to go. So in this case, I think that you're looking at Darnell Mooney, Velus Jones, Equanimeous St. Brown. I think you keep Byron Pringle. It's very interesting. He hasn't practiced. He's been hurt, but I think that they brought him in. He was one of the first signings for the offense that the Bears made. So I think Pringle's your 4th guy. And then I will say that they go ahead and do 5 players here. And that's funny because that brings it down to N'Keal Harry, who's on IR, so he doesn't technically count at the – I guess he's not on IR, but he is on the PUP maybe. He doesn't count towards your roster limit at the moment, I don't believe. So in many ways, you can kind of hold off on him, and then you would have to activate him later and then drop somebody. So that leaves you in a situation where you're looking at Chris Fink, Isaiah Coulter, Kevin Shea, and Samuel Webster, Tajay Sharp, or Dante Pettis. I think that you're probably looking at Dante Pettis or Tajay Sharp, and it's a pick your flavor. I personally think that they would go with Dante Pettis. Dante Pettis is a guy with some second-round pedigree. I think that he's got some return skills, some versatility. Tajay Sharp certainly is a bigger body, has more production in the league. I don't really think you can go wrong saying one or the other, but for my prediction, I would go with Dante Pettis being your wide receiver 5. We'll finish up the offense here with the offensive line, and then I'll look at your comments and respond. So some of this is relatively simple as well. I think Braxton Jones is your left tackle is obviously being kept. Cody Whitehair. So let me break it down and just say the offensive line. You've got to obviously have 5 starters. I would imagine you keep around 8 players for that offensive line. And so as I'm trying to keep track here, we had cut 4 with the tight ends. With the receivers, I'm cutting Sharp, Webster, Shea, and then Coulter and Fink. So that's 5 players. So we're up to 9 out of, what is that, 24 that we need to cut? Or 27. 27 that need to be cut. So we're going Braxton stays, Cody stays, Patrick stays, Schofield stays, Reef stays, Borum stays, Jenkins stays. That's 7. And I think some of this has been made easy with guys like Doug Kramer being on IR, so you don't have to worry about him. Mustafer is 8. What's interesting here is that puts guys like Zach Thomas and Jatire Carter as kind of fringe players. Where could you keep 9 players on offensive line? Sure. And I'm actually just cutting as I see fit here with I'd keep this many in the room. I'll see what that equals out based on how many we've cut. And then if there's space extra, then sure, we can talk about adding back some of these players. But I thought that they'd keep 8. That's 8. So that means you're cutting guys like Sean Coleman, Gene DeLance, Dieter Iceland, Corey Dublin, Jatire Carter, and Zach Thomas. I'll be frank, I think that they probably keep 9, but for the interest of getting the cuts down, let's go 8. And if this would be easily one that I would want to add a player back to if we have space. So I'm cutting the following: Gene DeLance, Sean Coleman, Dieter Iceland, Corey Dublin, Zach Thomas, and Jatire Carter. That's 6 players. And then your 8 are Riley Reef, Tevin Jenkins, Michael Schofield, Lucas Patrick, Sam Mustafer, Cody Whitehair, Larry Borum, and Braxton Jones. And I didn't even mention another, so it's 7 is Latavius Simmons. So we are cutting 7 players from that offensive line. That puts you at 16 players cut on the offense, with another 11 that have to be cut on the defense. So we'll take a little break as I read through your comments here. Okay. You want to see Tonga stay on the practice squad? Sure, Cliff. I mean, this is the thing is that I think it's very easy to go, you can't let that guy fall onto a practice squad because you feel like somebody else would pick them up. The reality is many times, I think what happens is you have teams that always feel that way. Like we have to let these guys go, but we're worried about them hitting practice squad and somebody else taking them. And what ends up happening is they have to cut players. You cut people that you think other people are going to take, but you have so many other teams feeling the same way about their own guys that guys like Tongas could be on the practice squad and there's really no concern about somebody else going to pick them up, and you can keep them as a utility player for your practice squad. So, Cliff, I think you don't have a bad point there. J2K saying you think Harry on IR might give us a chance to check out a wide receiver for a few weeks. Yeah, absolutely. This is why I was high on a Mims operation in many ways, because if you could get a guy like Denzel Mims or an Auden Tate, another guy I'm pretty high on, as just a big body to try out in the absence of your original big body ball winner guy like N'Keal Harry, I'm with that. Let's go ahead and give him a go. Auden Tate's a guy that's available right now. I wish that they'd pick him up. Okay. N'Keal would be a surprise cut, more likely are. Yeah, Cliff, I don't think that they're going to cut N'Keal Harry. You don't throw the draft pick there. I think that they want to give him a fair shake. Chris saying you're a crumpets and tea guy for breakfast or being English fry. Okay. Chase Allen's been great, but we can stash him. Yeah, J2K, that's fine too. I know Cliff's here saying, really, would they cut O'Shaughnessy? This is one where it's the whole, like, if you had to only keep Zach Thomas or Jatire Carter, who do you go? I think both are about that same roster status where, look, Chase Allen's the young guy that had a decent career at Iowa State. James O'Shaughnessy's been a guy that's kind of bounced around, but he's a veteran. He's found a way to stay in the league. He's a savvy vet. Pick your flavor. And in this case, I think, hey, let the kids play. Let's get young talent out there. And even if it's in a reserve role, I'd rather have Chase Allen playing some special teams than James O'Shaughnessy. So in that case, that's why I think I tend to go that way. But, to each their own. Keep 5 and put Harry on IR and fill the spot with another receiver. Yeah, J2K, that's what I think that they should do. And then Foster coverage saying Pringles on pup. Big question, Mustafa Iceland. I know everybody hates Sam Mustafa. I think Sam Mustafa is a heady player. That's what I don't think a lot of people want to give credit to is he's a guy that understands how to set protections. He's familiar snapping to Justin Fields. He's got inside versatility playing center and guard. He's not the strongest guy, but in his own scheme, he doesn't have to be. He just needs to wall off defenders and be able to get a little displacement off the line with a guy like Tevin on some deuce blocks or things like that if he's playing center, for example, and Tevin's your right guard. So I think that you can work with that. That's why I would keep Mustafa over a guy like Iceland. And Iceland, let's put it this way. Mustafa's got starting experience. That would maybe be a little more valuable to as a practice squad player for teams to pick off of as opposed to a Dieter Iceland. Okay. Carter and Thomas to practice squad. Kramer. Yeah, sure. I mean, I wouldn't mind. I like Zach Thomas a lot, and Jatire Carter's cool too, but those guys would maybe be able to be on your practice squad and not have a huge issue there with being picked up. Lou saying Sharp would 100% make it. You like Pettis too, but he'll be number 6. Yeah, I mean, that's another pick your flavor. This is why I thought this is fun because as somebody was saying, I think it was renewable, like, it's pointless to do this early. Sure, you can certainly say some of this you don't know, but it's a fun game because in some of these, let's be real, Kevin Shea hasn't done really much of anything in the preseason. It's pretty easy to say that guy's not making it on the 27 that have to be cut. Gene DeLance, as much as I love my Florida Gator guys, he hasn't been a phenomenal player out there. I haven't taken notice to him when I've reviewed the film. Sean Coleman, same way. So some of these guys, you can kind of understand why some people would stay, some wouldn't. As we go through, Dieter's going to get grabbed on the practice squad. J2K, I mean, yeah, maybe. You may be a little higher on Dieter than maybe I am, and that's okay. We see it differently. I think Dieter, I would question, what have you seen from Dieter that makes you absolutely think somebody would snag him? I mean, I guess Alex Bars got picked up by the Raiders. So, I mean, but see, I would say like a guy like Alex Bars is a better player than Dieter Iceland. Cliff saying, J2K saying Dieter and Carter would be your priority. Cliff saying Iceland and Carter are tough cuts. Renewable saying Pickens look better at left guard than he did briefly. Yeah, I mean, that's why really this is going to be a very tough time for Ryan Poles and the staff, I would imagine, to say who makes the cut on some of these, where a guy like Michael Schofield hadn't played very well and he's been there a short time. But I tend to think they like that. It's again, it goes back to that basement level. They wanted these guys for this level of play. And I would imagine that would trump a guy like Pig Simmons, for example. Okay. 80 players, 11 players will be completely cut, 16 to practice squad. Sure. I'm just going to cut the 27 to say they're down to 53. Who goes to practice squad, who doesn't, I guess we could maybe talk about, but I've got to get 27 off the roster, and that's what we're working to do. Teams have to put the players on the starting 53. It's easy to stash a guy. Poles doesn't seem to be afraid to cut players he's picked up if they don't. Yeah, I mean, that's Cliff. I think you got a good point there. That's the reality is, look, best players are here to stay, and if you're not the best, then we'll move on from you. Carter, future replacement for Whitehair. Iceland should get plenty of reps Saturday to prove. Yeah, renewable. I hope that's the case. I hope Dieter Iceland does get some work so that he ultimately becomes a player that gets a fair shake when it comes to roster evaluation. And then Bears are looked at as crap out of the league right now. They maybe go, Cliff, that's a great point. I don't know. We'll see how much the NFL executives think the Bears look like crap. But yes, if you're going by the media, the Bears are hot garbage and they've got no talent. And Mike Martz and people at the 33rd team apparently think that the Bears are a laughing stock as far as a talent keep. And so theoretically, yes, Cliff, that's a good point that at the end of the day, if they cut players, you may not see NFL teams flock to grab them. Okay. Sharp, Richard Long saying Tajay Sharp seems more clutch than Pettis. Absolutely, that could be the case. Like I said, it's a flavor thing at that point. Lou saying, I'll say that Sharp simply because Flus and Fields keep talking about him. Pringle, Harry, and Sharp are in Flus's plans to talk about them. Yeah, Lou, that's a good point. Dieter's tape, best center play on the team so far. Yeah, Dieter has looked very, very solid, Foster. And I'm not telling you that I don't have any issue with Dieter. I think it speaks levels, though, that sure, did Dieter get bought back? Yes. But Sam Mustipher was a very interesting desire to keep him and re-sign him to a one-year tender. And I believe that they did that before Dieter got it. So, again, call me crazy. I think that they like Mustipher. And I know he's everybody's favorite person to clown on. I'm not telling you he's a Hall of Famer, but I think he gets a bad rap. Who do you think the DB roster is? Yeah, we're going to move to defense right now, Jeremy. We won't know any reality until we see Saturday's game. Yeah, absolutely, Cliff. We're just, just vibing and doing this and playing along. And I love the conversation about, I'm here telling you, I think Dieter gets cut, and I go Dante over Tajay, and then you have a few people go, no, I definitely would take Tajay. And that's what's interesting is we can agree on something. Like, obviously Mooney's going to be there, Fields is going to be there, Komet's going to be there, Tevin Jenkins, Reef, Borum, Patrick. But I think it's interesting to have the conversations about those fringe guys. Is it Sharp? Is it Pettis? Is it O'Shaughnessy? Is it Allen? So Cliff saying Mustipher was a problem last season. Is he improved enough to change that? I think he's been okay. I don't think he's been phenomenal. But it goes back to the fact, and this is some of it's on, let me be clear, some of this is Fields and the offense. But they stay on schedule. I haven't seen Mustipher just getting Justin Fields killed. I've seen him give up some pressures, but I've also seen a guy that I'm a big fan of in Tevin Jenkins do that. So somebody asked me earlier, maybe it was you, Cliff, of like, what's the biggest concern on this team? And I had said it's offensive line, because we are a couple weeks away from playing a vicious defensive line in San Francisco that's coming to Chicago. And I think that the starting offensive line of 5 that they haven't gelled. It's why I think it's so important that they play this week, because look, injuries can happen anywhere. That's why I'm not too concerned about the players playing. I want that offensive line playing 3 freaking quarters if I could. Just get them time to gel, because there's not going to be any real competition after this for the next 2 weeks. Mustipher has the know-how, but not the physical tools. Absolutely, J-Rock, that's fair. And look, the reality is there are players in the league that don't have equitable physical tools but find a way to stay on rosters because of their mental game. That happens. Richard Long saying Whitehair isn't an option at center. Maybe in a pinch, but then who are you putting at left guard, Richard? That's what I would ask you. Foster saying Mustipher is a middle-of-the-pack center. He just wins with the fact that he's played in NFL games. Yeah, Foster, this is the thing, and J2K saying can't wait to see Nick Bosa and Samson Ebukam and all those defensive ends, Charles Amena, who go up against our offensive tackles. It'll be a good test. Good old lines play together in a long time. Bears are at the beginning of building a line, Cliff. Absolutely. That's where I think let's get the kids on the offensive line gelling. Let's get them tape and play so that they can hopefully start to build that camaraderie, that team. So let's move on here. Whitehair's on his last year at left guard. Patrick is supposed to be back with Mustipher and Eisler. Yeah, and that's the thing. Lucas Patrick should be back. It's been, the reality is when he broke his thumb, it was never a concern that he'd be back for week 1. That doesn't mean that all recoveries go on the right pace, but I would imagine that if there was a setback, you would have maybe heard a little bit, not from Flus, but maybe some Bears insider, maybe an Ian Rappaport or something would have maybe been able to say that, look, this Bears center hasn't been on the right recovery track, but I don't anticipate that's the problem. So we'll see as we get ready to move along to defense here. Let me make sure I'm caught up. Cliff saying Bears need Lucas back ASAP. Yes, they do. We're starting on the big cup of water here, and as we get down to the end here, we'll wrap it up. Okay, so defense. Let's start with the D-line. We've got Robert Quinn, obviously. let's knock out the easy ones. Travis Gibson, Robert Quinn, definitely sticking around. Al-Qadim Muhammad sticking around. Dominic Robinson sticking around. That's 4. We're talking just defensive ends at the moment. I'll work about D tackles in a minute. D ends. I think, look, the whole thing that this defense is predicated on, you go watch Colts film, is they love to have waves of defensive linemen. And I'm not saying they're going to build it exactly like the Colts, but the Colts had Ben Banogu, Deo Adeyingbo, Tyquan Lewis. They had Kwity Paye, that's 4. And they may have had they had Al-Qadim Muhammad, that's 5. Just on the defensive ends. We're not counting Buckner or Stewart or any of those guys. So I think it's fair to say that you would probably see 5 DNs, maybe 6. And some of these are going to hurt because, like, I'll give you an example. Charles Snowden is a guy that I really enjoyed as a player coming out. Many ways how people are like, oh, I can't believe we got Jack Sanborn as an undrafted free agent. I felt that way about Charles Snowden. The only reason I think he made it as an undrafted free agent was his ankle surgery. And I thought the Bears were lucky to get him. But admittedly, he hasn't played that strongly in this preseason. And so he may be a guy that's on the fringe. But I love his physical tools. But even I have to admit that a guy like Sam Kamara has played better. So let's just go through the 4 DNs, which I think that they actually end up keeping 5. So you've got Robert Quinn. You've got Trevis Gibson. You've got Al-Qadim Muhammad. You've got Mario Edwards Jr. That's 4. See, this is what's crazy is you get to Dominique Robinson. That's 5. I'll break my logic a little bit here. I'm going to go ahead and say that they go with 6. And this sucks. This was crazy is I'm giving myself an extra player here at 6. And it's directly between a guy like Kamara or Snowden. And I wish we could keep both. But I think you keep Kamara based on the production. And look, this is polls. He takes production over physical tools in some respects. So I think you cut Snowden there. Oops, sorry. So let's go ahead and add that to the ticker. We would then have cut 17 players moving on from Snowden. We'll go through the defense here. I'll count up who we've cut, and then I'll review your comments, and we'll kind of talk about it. But let's move on to your defensive tackles. I think Justin Jones is in play. I think Angelo Blackson, obviously. As we move down, I think that this is a little rich, but I'm going to say they keep 4 defensive tackles. You get 2 3-techs, 2 1-techs. So you've got Justin Jones, Angelo Blackson. Then you have Kyrus Tonga. I think he stays. I think Pennell is the guy that actually gets moved. He's the other 1-tech. See, but this is what's interesting is in many ways, I think Mario Edwards is the guy that can move in and play some 3-tech. Angelo Blackson can play a little bit of both, but he's more of a 3-tech. I know there's either Jack or Danny on Bear Debate had said Micah Dew Treadway would be a guy that would stick around. Maybe. Trevon Coley's had a decent preseason. I still think Dew Treadway and Coley, though, are out. And this is going to sound wild, but I think you get to butter your bread a little bit where you have 2 3-techs, technically 3, Justin Jones, Angelo Blackson. If you need to move a guy into 3-tech, Mario Edwards Jr. moves in. And then you have 2 guys that can really hold up against the run in Kyrus Tonga and Mike Pennell. And you see Micah Dew Treadway and Trevon Coley hit the street. So that would be 2 more. That puts us at 19. Moving along to linebacker. DeMarquise Gates has actually played okay, but I think, XFL guy, or was it XFL? Whatever league was currently going. I think it was XFL. So DeMarquise Gates comes in, looks okay, but I think that you could probably put a guy like him on the practice squad. Matthew Adams knows the hits principle, probably a decent culture guy because he knows what Flus likes. I think, and obviously has a relationship with the linebackers coach Dave Borgonzi. I think that Matthew Adams sticks around. Jack Sanborn absolutely has found a way to stick on this roster with his special teams play, and I think he's a good depth piece at linebacker if he needed to play for an injury to Roquan or Nick Morrow. So I think that you keep Morrow, Roquan, Sanborn, Adams, and then you're talking about who are your Sam players, and it comes down to Thomas and Johnson. I think you keep 2 at each spot, and that's a little rich. I know that you could maybe cut 1, but I'm going to say that, damn, it's hard. I think I like Johnson more than Thomas, but Thomas is a savvy vet that finds a way to stick around in the league. I may be guessing that we will be able to cut to 27 without having to cut somebody from linebacker. So I'll say that they stick with 6. The only guy I'm cutting there is DeMarquise Gates. We're at 20 players cut. Moving along to corner, we have, let me see. I don't know why I'm getting this. There we go. So then we move to corner, obviously Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon. This is where it gets quite interesting. They actually had just cut Jason Stanley from IR today. So you have Jalen Jones, Thomas Graham, Greg Stroman, Duke Shelley, Lamar Jackson. I think you keep 5 here. And I think your 5 are Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Kendall Vildor. This is wild. Duke Shelley. I think he's your backup nickel, believe it or not. I love Tavon Young, and I think he'd be worth keeping around, but good God, he cannot stay healthy. So I actually think you want to talk about a surprise cut. I think Tavon Young would be gone. He hasn't played, hasn't practiced a lot. I don't know if they're willing to keep a guy like that when you have other guys that need to play. And so I think we're talking about the keepers being Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Kendall Vildor, Duke Shelley. And then it really, to me, comes down to a battle of Lamar Jackson or Thomas Graham. And I would prefer Thomas Graham. I was a big fan of Thomas Graham's game. Oh, nugget, he actually went to school or went to high school very close to me in California. I'm familiar with his play in Rancho Cucamonga. And so it comes down to him or Lamar. I actually think they like Lamar Jackson's length, big corner. And Thomas Graham hasn't been a guy that, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, but I don't think he's been practicing for a very long time at this point. This would hurt me, similar to Charles Snowden, but I think that they would go 5th guy being Lamar Jackson and cut Thomas Graham and then see if you can stash him on a practice squad. So what that leaves you with is you are moving on from Tavon Young, Stroman, Graham, and Jones. That's 4 players. That puts us up to 24. We've got to move on from 3 more. Some of this is actually going to be relatively easy. Obviously, let's just quickly go down to the special teams here. You're not cutting anybody. You need a kicker, you need a long snapper, and you need your punter, and obviously your holder and all that. So I don't think that you are watching any of those guys go. So really, we have to make 3 players move from safety. And some of this is relatively easy. Eddie Jackson, Jaquan Brisker, DeAndre Houston Carson's your big nickel, capable of playing some stronger free as a versatile piece. I know one of the guys on Bear Debate said Dane Cruikshank's gone. I don't think that's the case. I think Dane Cruikshank is your backup strong safety, and right now Jaquan Brisker's hurt. And I think that he's a good tight end eraser. I think he can play big nickel. He's an athlete. So I think those are your 4 corners, and that would leave you cutting 4. You don't need to cut 4. So I think you could maybe keep an Elijah Hicks. But see, this is where I will go back on this is my little exercise. I like Elijah Hicks. He's a guy I don't think there'd be a ton of demand for as a practice squad guy. So I think you cut Devontae Harris, John Alexander, A.J. Thomas, and Elijah Hicks. That's 4 players. So that would be a total of 28. We can get 1 back. So if I'm getting 1 guy back, I'm cutting – I'll give you an example. Of the guys that we've cut so far before I go back to your comments here. I wouldn't love cutting Elijah Hicks, but in this case I will. Who am I replacing him with? I would love to replace him with a Charles Snowden, but that's a me thing, and I even can admit that I don't think that's your best bet. Where I immediately have to go stock that back is I'm putting a Zach Thomas or a Ja'Tyre Carter back onto the roster. And then one of those guys may have to sit as a practice squad. And if you were dead set on trying to keep both Zach Thomas and Ja'Tyre Carter on the roster, then the next guy that would make sense to cut for me would be one of your Sam backers, whether it be Joe Thomas or Caleb Johnson. And then at that point, that gives you the 2 free spots where if you wanted to put Snowden or Hicks or Carter or Thomas or one of those other guys back, that is your 27. And so if we go through and count them, we've got Alexander cut, Thomas cut, Hicks cut, Harris cut, Tavon Young cut, Stroman cut, Graham cut, Jalen Jones cut. We're moving to DeMarquise Gates, that's 9. Charles Snowden, that's 10. Trayvon Coley, 11. Micah Dew Treadway, that's 12. And then that's it for defense. 13 Tongas, 14 DeMontre Tuggle, 15 Peterman, 16 Fink, 17 Coulter, 18 O'Shaughnessy, 19 Coleman, 20 Iselin, 21 Dublin, 22 Pig Simmons, 23, Jatire Carter, and I'm keeping Zach Thomas. 24, Kevin Shea. 25, Webster. And then 26 is Sharp. And 27 is technically N'Keal Harry's on IR. So that is how you get to your 27. Sorry, I know that's a lot of talking. Let me stop sharing so I actually don't have to read off my phone and I can start going back to your comments. Okay, let's go back here just a bit. Okay. So moving along. Sorry, just trying to catch up to where I stopped on my phone. Cliff, yeah, water, right? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just like talking and I'm going to get thirsty. I have to drink it. Quinn will be traded before the deadline. I would actually see, I think it would decimate your pass rush because I think Quinn still got something, but I also think he's down for a down year. And if you can get, we're in this stage where you are rebuilding the roster. So you want to talk about like Brian Dable and Joe Shane, they were trying to trade a guy like James Bradbury, but they've tried to get rid of pieces where they can. The Bears should be in the same mode. If you can get something for Robert Quinn that's not chump change, if it's a fourth or a fifth, why not? He's in his 30s. You're not winning a Super Bowl this year. You can say that you're winning a Super Bowl in 23. I think you have to really see what you're spending money on before you just – and see how they all mesh before you just sit there and say you're winning a Super Bowl in 23. If you can get something for Quinn, I think you do it. Okay, Cliff saying you're having tequila looks like a wire. Yeah. Well, I would not be able to do the show if I was having tequila. Has Snowden showed enough? Probably not. No, Cliff, Snowden hasn't shown enough, and that hurts me. I like Snowden a lot, but I don't think he's been able to show enough, and that's been the issue. It's why I think I would have to cut him. Cliff, you're also saying Mario could be a surprise cut or trade. I see it's not fair. It's not reasonable, which is why let me preclude by saying that. I would rather keep a Snowden than an Edwards, but only because I have some weird affinity for the player that Snowden is. But I think Mario Edwards is a guy that's found ways to be disruptive, found a way to stay in the league because he was formerly a second-round pick, has inside and outside versatility, decent run defender, can be a penetrator, can play inside at 3-tech if you need it. I think that's an interesting player that, sure, I guess he could be surprise cut. He hasn't played, but could that just be a sign that, look, they value him. They don't need him to play. Don't cut your punter. No. Trenton Gill is safe. I don't know if Matt Ariza is safe in Buffalo, but we will see. I don't like to jump to any conclusions. They're just accusations at this point. Coley to the practice squad, I do agree. Isn't Adams hurt? Adams is hurt, but I didn't. It wasn't like a torn ACL or anything, was it? If it's a tie, take the vet. Yeah, I mean, Cliff, I saw you were kind of in that same way with O'Shaughnessy. You were like, hey, why would you cut O'Shaughnessy between Allen? If it's a tie, take the vet. Sure. I mean, those are decisions that the staff's going to make, and who knows? They may split it down the middle. Some guys they take the vet, some guys they take the younger player. But Renewable saying DeMarquise Gates has been making plays. It's tough. Yeah, he's been making plays, but I don't see a situation where it hasn't been. He hasn't had a sack, hasn't had a fumble recovery, hasn't had any true impact plays the way like a Sanborn has. And I'm not saying we're debating if Sanborn makes the roster, but kind of to what Cliff's point is, if it's a tie, take the vet. Joe Thomas is a vet. Matt Adams is a vet. Caleb Johnson has got not necessarily a year, but he's got a year in the NFL more than DeMarquise Gates has. DeMarquise Gates has had a cup of coffee at a couple places. Cliff, I'm with you. AJ Thomas gone. Never heard of him. Thomas ran the wrong way, allowing a long gain, messed up other plays too. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm not. He's a savvy vet that's found a way to stick around. I don't love him as a linebacker, but they may be looking for the reason he fits, Cliff, just so people know, is he came from Dallas at the time. I believe he was with Dallas during the time that Marinelli was there, coaching linebackers as their defensive coordinator as well. And so he may understand the culture, and that's why they may want him there. As well as Flus was obviously in Dallas at the time as well. Graham hasn't been on the field. Yeah, Renewable, that's my point, is he hasn't practiced. I like Thomas Graham a lot. But if I'm going to sit there and cut Tavon Young, who's much more established than Thomas Graham, because he hasn't practiced and been on the field, why would they keep Graham and cut Tavon Young? I think both of those guys go. If you're looking at it that way of we don't keep players that don't practice and haven't shown anything. It's all about performance. Those guys would be gone. Renewable, I see you saying Elijah Hicks stays. Elijah Hicks is good at falling on balls. Yeah, I think he was in the right place at the right time. I know it sounds like I'm hard on Elijah Hicks. I'm not. I liked Elijah Hicks as a player at Cal when he was playing with Ashton Davis and a few of the other Cal defensive backs that I like. Bruce Feldman had plenty of nice things to say when he was doing a story on Davis and Hicks, who I believe are roommates or very close, being both safeties at that program. No, it sounds like I'm hard on him. I'm not trying to be. I actually, like I said, I've said this before a little bit on some podcasts. I don't think that it is a skill problem. I think that safety is a hard position to play, and I think that you can get caught up with confusing responsibilities and reading plays and not, getting burnt. I've seen enough plays where opposing quarterbacks have been able to hit the honey hole. That is essentially the zone between your low curl to flat zone of a cover 2 defense, and then the safety is supposed to be the roof on the top. And there's this little middle ground between the both, which is what is often called the money hole, honey hole, one of those, where theoretically you can hit those intermediate fade routes, slot fades, go balls. If you're timing it right, you can hit those. And opposing quarterbacks have had no problem hitting those on the Bears throughout this preseason. And there's been quite a few where Hicks is the guy that needs to be over there. And I get that he doesn't want to get burnt deep, but I can't also let you be having guys catching 20-yard passes in the honey hole because you don't have the range to get over there. And I don't think like I said, it's not a skill issue. To me, I don't think it's a skill issue. I think that it's a matter of trying to process the speed of the game. And I don't think he's been nearly as, let me put it this way, I don't think he's been nearly as impressive as everybody thinks he is, because he had a hype video when he got drafted doing push-ups and everything. I don't dislike the player. I think he's worth developing. I think he's worth keeping on the practice squad, but I'm not sure that he automatically makes the team. Now, of course, some of that is going to be special teams. He obviously had that muffed punt return for not even really a return, but fell, as you say, fell on the ball for a touchdown. But it's a situation there where I don't think his roster spot is as certain as people assume it is. As hard as this has been, just think when Poles brings in the guys we don't even know about yet. Yeah, it's renewable. This is why, like I said, it's just a practice exercise, but I think it's interesting to go through it and think who makes it, who's for sure, who's not, who's a fringe, who's for sure like, oh, Kevin Shea probably not going to make it. Those guys are easy to cut. Well, who are the guys that we don't exactly know about? Where do they sit? Shows how hard it is to be an NFL coach. Yes, absolutely. I as much as that's where I know guys like Nomad like to give me a hard time, like you're a couch GM. I don't think I necessarily could do a better job than any of these GMs. I guess if that makes me a couch GM for playing GM and that offends anybody, then fine, let it offend them. But I find it interesting to consider team building, to consider process, how you cut certain players. What players do you pick up? Do you keep a vet over a young guy? Do you keep a young guy over a vet? Do you take it kind of middle down the road where, certain positions get veteran preference while others don't? How much does special teams matter? Special teams matters a lot, but okay, well, if they're playing special teams, is it a young guy? Is it an older guy? I think that some of those things come up. Cliff, you're saying Quinn only traded for the right offer. Okay, and then isn't Quinn a development piece for the younger ends? Richard, I think that's a fair point. Sure, I think he absolutely would teach the younger ends, and it's why I think that they want to keep him. But at a certain point, he's not a coach. I think that the guy that should be developing your younger ends is your D-line coach. Obviously, Cliff, I agree. Gang rape's an obvious cut if it's proven. Yeah, but until now, we got to see if it's proven. After watching the last game, why are you keeping AJ just because he's an idiot? Flu's favoring vets over young hits disciples. I don't know. We'll see. Richard, too early to see what Flu's is. Yeah, I think but see, this is the whole point, is we're definitely able to try to glean information about what they value based on their moves, based on how they build the team, based on who's cut, who's signed, who's traded for, trading Mac over Quinn. Certainly Mac had more trade value than Quinn, but I still think, that some of that was clearly like, hey, I want to shed this salary and I'll take what I can get. And certainly Mac's salary was more prohibitive than Quinn's, but it's even some you can glean something from the fact they decided to keep Quinn in that system over Khalil Mack. And like I said, I'm sure that there's a more propensity to trade for Mac over Quinn. But, it's interesting. So why do you pick X versus Y? And I think we've seen some of that. So one of Pole's skills seems to be evaluating talented cuts. He'll grab guys he thinks are better than what. Yeah, absolutely. So that is our 53-man roster projection. We are caught up on comments, so we'll move on from that. Hopefully that was somewhat insightful, and we can glean a little bit of information from that. Outside, let me drink some water here, and we'll kind of move on with the agenda. Okay. So then, as I get to the 11th hour here, as I'm getting ready to finish my cup of water, and it's already late. It's Cliff for you in Florida. It's already past midnight. Well past midnight. I'd like to kind of pass. We can just kind of chit-chat the topic and the subject of this final preseason game. It is a final dress rehearsal for these players, starters. I would love to hear what you guys want to see from Fields. Let me pitch you just a sample question, but anything you want to see, whether it's like, I'll give you an example. I hope Charles Snowden shows some worth to keep. I hope Tevin Jenkins looks better, but I'll pitch you a sample question. But as anything, if there's anything that you want to get off your chest, you want to see, you want to talk about regarding this final dress rehearsal, as there'll be 2 weeks of break before we see the Bears play the Niners again and in what will be meaningful football. The thing that I think I am most curious to ask is, Justin Fields is going to play for some certain period of time. Is there a time that you would say you don't need to see Justin Fields anymore? For example, if he comes out, leads a 5-play touchdown drive, looks phenomenal, does he still need to play? Or you go, no, wow, he came out, had a touchdown, let's just take him out, we're good. That's all we need to see. How long do you keep offensive line in? These are the questions I'd like to just kind of pick your brain, Barflies, and see what you have on mind. But I can certainly talk about them as well, but I'll let you kind of steer the conversation here as I read through Cliff stuff. He pulls a lot better than Pace so far. Pace had first-round misses. Yeah, well, to be fair, Cliff, Pace had first-round misses. Poles hasn't had a chance to miss on the first round, so of course it's going to be easy to go, oh, well, yeah, it looks good with those second-round picks. I love Brisker. That's no secret. I think Brisker is the dude. I think athletically, Kyler Gordon has everything you want. I just need to see it more. I found it very interesting that they want to put him on nickel, which, look, Roger McCreary wasn't there. I used to fight with Greg over the short arms, and I think I won a little bit. Kyler Gordon was sitting there when Roger McCreary wasn't. Roger McCreary went in the first 3 picks of the second round. But I find this interesting because if you wanted a nickel that bad, I would have thought, go pick that Alec Pierce in the second round and go get Marcus Jones in the third, or, go get a Monteric Brown later. But they decided to value this guy that, yes, Kyler Gordon can play outside, but at least in that first game, they decided to play him almost exclusively at nickel. So it'll be interesting to see when you're saying, Poles is going to have 2 first-round picks that could be first-rounders. I am taking a much more wait-and-see approach with Kyler Gordon. And even to be fair, I love what I see in Brisker, but I'm a little worried he's a glass cannon. I saw him play hard in one game and somehow fuck up a thumb, and it's a little not so concerning, but let me remind you all of Bob Sanders, a guy that would throw his shoulder around and find a way to get hurt consistently. Some other teams are loaded at positions and will drop guys who may improve the Bears. Yeah, Cliff, that's my favorite part is there's already guys like Auden Tate. I thought he's on the market. I would have at least brought him in for a tryout at least and said, let's see Justin throw you some balls and see if you're this ball winner that we thought N'Keal Harry was, but he's not been able to play. Is there some value there? Want to see 1 or 2 years of Fields before deciding how good? Yeah, totally fair. Totally fair, Cliff. Dominant run blocking to sell play actions, what you want to see, Richard? Yeah, that would be awesome too. Boy, if they were able to really – this is something that I've had a little bit of a complaint with Luke Getsy on, is not a big complaint. He's fine. But if you want to sit here and tell me Luke Getsy's play calling is great, I think it's much improved over Matt Nagy. But we've talked about, Cliff had talked earlier that we haven't seen the full running offense. I agree. And I know it's vanilla. But if I have a complaint, it's that the Bears haven't been able to move the offense consistently with good gains outside of chunk designer plays, which is what I'm talking about as the bread and butter of this offense, which is here's a screen to Cole Kmet. Here's a screen to Velus Jones. Here's a naked rollout with levels or a flood concept. Can you just run the ball for 5 or 6 yards consistently? Can you find a way to get first downs running and pounding it down their throat so that you can actually get a huge gain on play action? And so, Richard, I agree there. No, I get you, Cliff. I appreciate it. Thumbs break, injuries happen. Yeah, this is my whole point. Like, that's why I'm like, hey, play the kids as much as you want, because Minka Fitzpatrick hurt his hand. He's not seriously hurt, but he had hurt his hand before training camp this year doing a bike ride. And he was out for some time because he had a sore wrist, hand hurt, whatever. The whole point is you can get injured doing anything. You can slip on water in your kitchen and hurt your back. So you're right. Injuries happen. Thumb breaks happen. I don't think it totally means that Brisker's a glass cannon, but I know that he was hurt. He hurt his shoulder from, maybe it didn't come from directly throwing it into somebody, but I think he's a physical player who likes to put his shoulder into people, and his shoulder was screwed up going back to Penn State. And now you're seeing one game and somehow his thumb gets wrecked. It's just a little bit of a concern about, are you playing a little too aggressive? Are you being a little too reckless with your health? Fu said they play the first half, so be it. Yeah, we'll see, though. Obviously, as you know, renewable, some of those players were not going to play the whole way. He had said some selective veterans, for example, I would imagine like a Cody. This is a perfect one. You want to get my bet for that. A guy like Cody Whitehair is absolutely not playing the full half. That's going to be, if it comes down to this, hey, it's Zach Thomas versus Ja'Tyre Carter. Which one of you guys wants to make the roster? That's like, hey, we're going to pull out Cody Whitehair. He's had 20 plays. Now this is going to be the, hey, it's Ja'Tyre Carter and Zach Thomas time to play with the starters, play with Justin Fields. Which one of you guys is going to be better? Because only one of you is going to make it. That would be an example I could see. Foster for saying thank you, Plam, need cohesiveness. Yeah, I hope that they do. I think it's desperately needed. You see Tevin being a huge part of the run game. He can chip. Yeah, I think like it's so funny because Bears fans, and I guess you could say I'm guilty. I don't think I've ever wavered on Tevin. He's one of my favorite players on the team, but I certainly take credence when Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo are saying that there's trade rumors. I certainly take credence to some of that. And so I've entertained, like, what could you get for him in a trade? But it's funny to see Bears fans that have gone, like, trade him. He's not been good. We drafted this guy, like Danny Shimon, like, well, they drafted a guy to play tackle, and if they knew he was hurt, I would have never done it. And it's interesting to see how Bears fans kind of waffle on the player. And now that he's a right guard, everybody's happy to see him get people's helmets popped off, and he's moving guys off the ball. And, you know, we're very fickle fans, Bears fans. Worry more about wide receivers who are often injured. Absolutely, Cliff. Renewable, you're saying you want to see rhythm, nastiness, short passes, handoffs, break big. Yeah. I mean, competent offense. You want an offense that's explosive. You want to see everything working, which is fair. Yeah, Cliff, I'm with you. Like, to me, I think that you should be playing your starters in the preseason. It's very interesting. I know a lot of people don't like preseason. I don't mean to go on too much of a diatribe here, but I love the preseason. It's a reason why I was like, hey, I'll do the show later today because I want to finish my preseason game. I don't think preseason is the best quality of football, but to me, as an NFL and football fan, I think if you're watching it to just try to glean what you can and learn from different areas, that's why I love the preseason. I think it has value. I know this is crazy to some people. I'd rather have 4 preseason games. I thought there was nothing wrong with the 16 games. Keep it the same. Give more opportunities to these back end of the roster guys to get chances because you get to see what new staffs look like. I mean, let's talk about the total benefits that I don't think I have to sell anybody on. You get to see the rookies play. That's always fun. You get to see new coaches come out and see what their schemes look like. And then even as a casual fan, if you're a casual fan, you get to come out and see the back of the roster guys and see who makes splashes. And even if they don't go out to do anything in the regular season, it's still fun to watch it while it's going on. Rodney Adams had a killer preseason last year. And it didn't even amount to anything, but it was fun to watch his story as it's ongoing. And then some of these times you're watching players, like you're watching Sanborn kill it in his preseason game. God forbid, like Morrow or Smith or one of those backers goes down. He may become a solid contributor in this defense. And you don't get to even have that interaction or know about that if you're not invested in the preseason watching what's going on around the league. And I'm not telling everybody that everybody has to be me, but I know we're all Bears fans, so we all watch the Bears preseason game, but I can tell you how impressed I am with Desmond Ridder, and I think that Washington may have had something in Sam Howell, and George Pickens looks the part. And I know that Seattle had a rough game against Chicago, but Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross look like the real deal. And Patrick Mahomes looks like he's coming back and ready to fight with the utmost fire in his play style, and, is taking names and kicking ass, and I love it. So I'm a big fan of the preseason. I'm enjoying it. I'm a little somber to see that it's going, but it also means that we're getting ready to meaningful football, and it's fun. Being the last chance, seeing which Bubble Guys wants it. Yeah, it's totally that's where, if we get a chance where Cody Whitehair's out and it's the Carter versus Thomas show, I think that's awesome. Want both guys to make it, but it's cool to see that competition. Fair weather fans jump on the trade bandwagon. Reality is different. Absolutely. Running back puts a pickup. Richard, that's a great point. It's so funny. I was watching the Texans tonight, and Damian Pierce has had a killer training camp for them, and he looked really good tonight. And the announcers, Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit, were talking about, why are they putting Rex Burkhead in on third down? And I'm going, because this is the reality nobody wants to talk about. Everybody loves Ebner. Ebner can't cut his chops pass blocking right at the moment. I'm sorry, he can't. He's a liability on third down trying to pass block. And that's not just him. It's a lot of rookie running backs. And so, Richard, you're on a great point there. Running back blitz pickup is important. I mean, I loved Montgomery had a quote this week in his interview, or maybe it was last week, where he was talking about how much he values and places an importance on pass protection and pass pro, because he wants to keep Justin clean. He doesn't want to see his quarterback get punished. His job is to make sure Justin's life is easier. And I just thought that was totally the right mentality to have for a running back. And rookie running backs and young running backs typically don't have a great acumen when it comes to pass blocking, because it's just a different game at the NFL level. Get starters ready to play in the preseason, win the first few games. Yeah, absolutely. If you see him now, getting tired. At least 2 turnovers on D, more swarming hits, 2 sacks, several more QB pressures. Important things I've seen so far are just accountability and discipline, plus the halftime adjustments. Absolutely. Totally think that's fair. And then J2K, I've got looking through my stored comments here. J2K at 1 point said cuts coming up. Who do you think will surprise us? I think we went over that, so we'll go if we do that. And then I guess I will do this. As Cliff, you probably are reading my mind here. I'm getting close to the end of my water. I'm yawning. I'm tired. My wife is probably going to be like, hey, you said you'd be done at 10. Final questions for you, Chad. I appreciate you all hanging out and hanging around. If you have any final questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, anything you want to talk about, I'll go for as long as you want to spew them. But Cliff, if you have more, feel free, go ahead. I'm not limiting you to just this one. But my thought on the state of the Bears now, if anybody hangs around to this late in the podcast on the replay, this is where they're going to turn it off, because they're like, Jordan's such a negative fan. I think that the Bears, I had the Bears right after the draft and even early on feeling like attic level, top level, no injuries, played really well. Fields is amazing. I thought that they'd win 11 games. Mid-level, decent amount of injuries. They play okay, but Justin Fields is keeping it on schedule, growing, improving. Training wheels are going well, running the ball. Komet's decent. Defense is playing well, forcing turnovers. 9 games, won. And then I said, if things go bad, the depth is deteriorated. Fields doesn't look good. I think that they win around 7 games. And when I say Fields doesn't look good, I'm not talking – if he looks like, I don't know, name a bad quarterback, Josh Rosen, then no, I think they win 3 games. But, just not what you're loving. If it's another Justin Fields from last year, I think they win 7 games. And that's what I see you're saying here. I think I'm a little more down currently on the Bears than a lot of people. I think a lot of what that's come down to is I think we're getting closer to the season, and it's finalizing about what this roster looks like, how Ryan Poles wanted to build it. And in many ways, I think that Ryan Poles, I don't think he's done a bad job. So this is where I'm not trying to totally pick at a guy like Nomad, but I got a few other people that just feel like I'm too harsh on Ryan Poles. I need to be more fair, and I'm trying to be. I don't think that Ryan Poles is doing a bad job. It's just not one that I agree with. I understand, like some Bear debate earlier, they were saying, understand. I think it was Jack Wright that was saying, understand the bigger vision, understand that guys like Gordon and Brisker were picked for the long term, not just selecting a receiver to, impact your quarterback in the beginning. But to me, I think that this is a problem I have, is that if you're, and look, this is reality. Nobody wants to talk about this because it's not convenient for what Bears fans want to see. The truth is, Ryan Poles doesn't have to do any commitment to Justin Fields. He will always have in his back pocket that I didn't select Fields, so if it doesn't work, no skin off my back, no sweat off my back. I'll just go pick my guy. And I'm not saying he's going to do that, but the reality is that I think that the Bears invested a lot for Justin Fields to be their quarterback, and I think he's been a successful quarterback everywhere he's gone. And I don't think he's a wasted talent, but I also think it's in your best interest, especially and this is the thing that I think a lot of people misunderstand, is it's absolutely in Ryan Poles' best interest for Justin Fields to work out. Because in many ways, yes, if Justin Fields works out, then no, he doesn't have to go spend that top pick in a quarterback. And I get it. I'm with that. But I don't think the actions are showing that that's the belief. If you really believe in Justin Fields and you want to support him, then I would have expected more measured approaches, more measured swings, more measured shots. And some of this, like I said, it's not that he's doing it the wrong way. It's just not one that I agree with. And, Nomad earlier had said something great on Bear Debate that I just thought was valuable, which is if you look at the moves and you consider that they have a defensive head coach and this is what you're trying to build, all the moves make sense. Yeah, it does. You hire a defensive coach, of course he's going to want his 3-tech. Oh, we could have a center, we could have a receiver, or trade for Tyreek Hill. And I'm not saying they should do that, but no, you know what? We're in a cap situation that's shitty, right? We don't have a lot of cap. Let's throw a decent amount of money at Larry Ogunjobi. But we're not going to throw money at, Teron Armstead or, any name it, wide receiver, Christian Kirk. And I'm not saying you should have totally paid him, but DJ Chark's a guy. You want to say, I'm talking about measured swings. DJ Chark is a great example. He signed 1 year, $10 million in Detroit. I laugh at that one because you can always make the argument of, well, would they wanted to come to Chicago? Sure, if they're going to Denver, San Francisco, Green Bay, maybe you would pick those over Chicago. I don't think you're picking Detroit over Chicago if there's equal offers, if it's 1 year, $10 million. And my question to a guy like Ryan Poles is, sure, maybe you don't want to spend $10 million on a receiver, but he's a guy that's talented. I would never even tell you DJ Chark's a number one, but he's a really solid number two as an X receiver outside that's acrobatic, fast, can make somewhat contested catches, take the top off of a defense. And he's not the same archetype as Darnell Mooney. Well, I don't want to lock myself in financially to a guy. You're not. Pay him 1 year, $10 million. Tell him to prove it for that $10 million. And if it works out, you just found a really good wide receiver to complement Fields and Darnell Mooney. And then you can work on the extension for him and Mooney next year. And if it doesn't work out, you don't have to pay him. It's a 1 year, $10 million deal. You move on and you go draft or find your other guy. That's a good example. You want to sit there and say, okay, well, let's draft a corner. I get corners are valuable, but in a league where the wide receivers are continuing to go up in their evaluation and their money spent, I don't think you can fix a DB core with one corner. Just like I don't think you can fix a wide receiver core with one wide receiver, but you happen to have one in Darnell Mooney. You're a lot closer to fixing your wide receiver core if you draft and hit on a wide receiver than you are in drafting one corner. As a matter of fact, to fix your whole secondary, you have to draft a safety and a corner, and now we feel good about the secondary. I think we'd feel a whole lot better if you told me Byron Pringle or ESB or any of these guys were your slot receiver because you had Alec Pierce or George Pickens on the outside. I think you'd feel a little bit better about the wide receiver core than maybe you even feel about just having – I try to leave safeties out of it, but look, it's a whole secondary. Kyler Gordon and Brisker. Imagine if it was Brisker and a receiver. Or, I wanted Logan Hall. Logan Hall didn't make it. But this is an example of guys I wanted. I thought a Mark Lewinsky would have been a decent guard ad. Came from the Colts. James Daniels hasn't played well. I know people want to bag on him. I wanted him as a center. I thought he would have been a decent center option if you could have kept him for a mid-year deal. Trying to think of some of the other options. You went and signed Tavon Young for a decent deal. It wasn't bad, but you signed him after guys like Justin Coleman and who are the other nickels? Desmond King, who had an interception tonight, returns punts, so he's got versatility. Justin Coleman ended back up in Seattle, and then K'Wan Williams is one of the best run defenders at nickel really fits the run well in one of the hardest positions in the defense. And you decided to sign Tavon Young, a guy that's always injury prone, and we're not getting any production out of him, at least in training camp and the preseason so far. And he went for about a little less, of course, but these nickels that I'm talking about didn't get paid $10 million. You could have picked one of those guys up. And this is to show you it's not all just about putting money into the offense. But I do have real questions about building it this way. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. But if you are there trying to commit to your quarterback, I think that you would have done a little more to try to really build it up for him. And it doesn't have to be the Jacksonville Jaguars way of dropping, X amount of millions on a bunch of slot receivers. Because I'm not saying you go sign, I didn't want them to go sign Christian Kirk for $19 million. But I definitely thought that you can take a few more measured swings and not lose out on guys like DJ Chark or K1 Williams or three techs. I'm trying to think of some of the three techs, for example. Oh, Thomas Booker at 150, Khalil Shakir at 148. And I know some of that means that you don't get Braxton Jones. Well, maybe sign Dwayne Brown. Dwayne Brown got 2 years and a mega deal from New York because they had to fix it and figure it out once Mekhi Becton went down. I was clamoring for a guy like Dwayne Brown for a long time. But like I said, I can go on about this forever. I'm not trying to be so somber. But to answer your question, Cliff, I am a little more down on them because just some of the – I guess one final thing I'll talk about is cap spending. And I know I'm kind of going into this as Chubbs is talking about how the cap isn't real, and I don't want to get too deep into that because I know it's a cluster muck of the conversation. But I'm not saying that the Bears are tanking. I certainly don't think that. You can't – I think that's a funny thing. Whenever you say somebody's trying to tank, understand that – tell that to a bunch of players that have a short time to make money and prove themselves in a league and a coaching staff that doesn't have a lot of patience to lose games, and then tell them to tank while the GM says, yeah, I'm tanking so I can do it next year. I don't think that works. So I don't think the Bears are trying to tank. But I also, as much as you want to tear it down to the studs and get a fresh start, this is what I'm talking about, where it begs the question of what are you doing to your rookie quarterback? What are you doing to your team when you've got guys on young, cheap contracts and you're only spending $149 million, I think it is, or $150 million. You're the lowest spending roster in the league. I get it. So you can carry over money to next year, but are you not trying to buy a little bit of goodwill and success for your young guys, your young quarterback to succeed? It begs some questions. Cliff, yes, everybody be aware Cliff's going to be on the Bear Country podcast on September 5th. I would love to see you in person. I will be tuning in. Thanks always for your incredible football knowledge. And thank you. You're very kind, Cliff. I don't think I'm some savant or anything. I just enjoy talking football, and I appreciate that you all are even here just listening to me yap. Chubbs, I don't understand this. Ryan Poles is not spending any money at all. He should not be concerned about the salary cap. He should be concerned. Yeah, sure. Chubbs, I think he should select good players. And if you're saying the salary cap's not real and, you're saying he's not spending any money. No, he is spending money, but if you're saying the salary cap's not real, then yeah, ball out a little bit. Don't go grab I don't have Pringle's numbers right up in front of me, but it wasn't $10 million. If cap's not real, then go grab Pringle and Chark. If cap's not real, you don't have to settle for Michael Schofield late in the process. You can just go get Mark Lewinsky. It's like there's question. Oh, why do you have to settle for Tavon Young at a super cheap deal when you can go get a more established corner that doesn't have health issues? And of course it's easy to poke holes. That's why I'm saying I'm couch GM right now. I don't have the answers, and we'll see how it all plays out. That's what I'm saying. It's very important to say it's questions and skepticism at worst at the moment. I cannot judge a man or the tenure when they haven't produced results and it hasn't been long enough. And I try to praise patience to fans or preach patience, because you watch Matt Nagy and Vic Fangio and that entire team go 12-4, and we all thought that they were superstars. And then 1 year later, it all looks like junk and it never reclaimed itself. So even if Ryan Poles looks like crap after 1 year as a GM, it doesn't mean it's going to stay that way, and vice versa. He can look awesome. Eberflus can look awesome in year one, and we've seen it before where it falls off. So as much as that's why I want to be clear, I'm just questioning process, maybe a little skeptical or would have done a few things different, but it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means that we see the game differently, and that's okay. At least a staff should get more wins than Nagy did. Yeah, and that part, Cliff, like you want to ask me how I feel about the Bears. I'll give you this one final thing. I think this is important. I have come to my mind, and I'd love to be wrong. If I had a real problem with the process of McCaskey here, is I think that they clearly had options like Dable and Shane as a pairing where they both know each other. Brian Flores. Somebody asked me earlier when we were first doing the chat, how would I have felt if Jim Caldwell was the offensive coordinator? I don't know if I would have loved Jim Caldwell, but that was a guy that made sense to me with a guy like Brian Flores if they had gone that way. But the whole point is, to me, is that McCaskey very much went with a safe bet. The Bears have been irrelevant. They've been hard. It's been hard to find solidarity and wins with the Bears. I look really bad as an owner and a chairman. How do I restore some respect to my name in the Bears? And I think he looked around and said, the last time we were relevant and it didn't look like a total shit show in Chicago was when Lovey was here. And there just so happens to be a Lovey disciple in the coaching pool, and he's earned a decent shot. So let me give him a shot. And we're just going to restore what was good back in 2006, 2008, 2010. And we'll just kind of roll those years back where this is the problem. If you ask me my opinion, history repeats itself. I think the ceiling for the Bears is a Super Bowl appearance because that's the farthest I've seen them ever go with a killer-ass roster on defense and not the right quarterback. And I saw them go to a Super Bowl, so I'm not going to go any further above that. I think their ceiling is going to a Super Bowl. At the same time, I also don't think they're ever going to bottom out. It's why I don't agree that they're going to go top 3 pick. This defense, this team doesn't ever play that way. They're going to be a team that's constantly relevant, relatively competitive, but I also don't know if I'm going to count on consistently incredible years. As much as everybody talks about how great Flus is as a defensive coach, and he is good, it's not an exotic defense. It's sophisticated. It's more sophisticated than the Lovey Tampa 2 that we were running back in 06 and 08. But this defense is consistently around top 10 in DVOA. It's not ever top 5. It's not ever top 3. It's not Fangio. It's not Brandon Staley. It's not the Rams defense when Brandon Staley was there. It's around top 10, which is exactly what we're talking about. Always competitive, always relevant, but never going to blow your hair back. So Cliff saying next offseason will be interesting. We're a lot closer to fixing the secondary now than the receivers. Yeah, Derek, I think that you're there now. But I mean, I also think, to be quite fair, I actually think the receivers and the DB room both. This is where I'm agreeing. I think Poles did get handed a shit sandwich. I don't think it was very easy to fix this roster. It was, matter of fact, it was impossible to fix this roster in one offseason. But then that's where I'm saying it's about what you pick. I actually think the DB room and the receiver room were both about equally bad when the draft started. He decided to fix the DB room more than the wide receiver core. And that's his prerogative. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. That's the interesting part of why I enjoy talking about this, because it's sliding doors. Should you have fixed the receivers? Should you have gone DBs? He went DBs. We're going to see how that works. Richard Pohl shops at the bargain basement. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Rams approved salary cap is fake in one direction. Tampa Bay Buccaneers Saints prove it's fake in another. Not paying people means the owner is cheap. As this man lost mine, Daniels was literally the second worst lineman on the team. D-Lou, you're allowed to feel that way. We all see the game differently. One thing I'd ask, and I think, whether it be Cliff Chubbs or anybody else, Renewable, I break down film. I talk about it. If you're going to, all I'm going to expect that, if you're going to tell me he's the second worst lineman on the team, tell me why. This player sucks. Great. You can say he sucks. Tell me why he sucks. We shouldn't trade for Denzel Mims because he failed at New York. Why did he fail at New York? What about him makes him not worth it, that he can't succeed in Chicago? Substantiate your takes before just telling me they're just the second worst lineman on the team last year. Poles fix Pace's destruction of the cap in one season. Yeah, let me go back to this, Cliff. Yes, he did. He did fix it in one season. It also means that what we've talked about, you are the cheapest team in the league. You're spending the least amount of money on your active roster. And did it fix it? Yes, but then I'd have to ask you, at what cost to Justin Fields? You can watch interviews with the cap management guys say that you can manipulate the cap. Yeah, I mean, Chubbs, I know that, like I said, you're very much the cap is fairy dust. If you have questions about the way polls have been, you literally have no football. Yeah, I mean, that's fine, dude. You can say what you'd like. Disagreeing with the chef on how he's preparing the food before tasting isn't really fair. Yeah, Renewable. That's what I'm saying. I listen, and I knew this topic gets people riled up, and that's fine. That's not my intention, but I don't mind having these conversations. Yes, is it fair to judge the chef while he's preparing the food and you haven't tasted it? No. I want to be clear. It's I'm watching a chef make a hamburger, and I'm going, I don't know if I've ever seen that cheese being used on a burger. I would have probably just gone with something more plain like a Monterey Jack or an American slice of cheese. I don't know what that is. That this super aged, triple aged Gouda that you're putting on. I'm a little skeptical. That's what the equivalent of this is. Doesn't mean that it's wrong, but haven't seen it done that way before, and I'm a little like, I don't know if that's going to work out. That's what this is, and if that's unfair or unreasonable, then it's unfair or unreasonable. When people say they don't want to pay Roquan Smith in the league where the cap goes up every year and they're not actually paying him, yeah. D-Lo, here we go. Ed Poles has literally done one of the most amazing. Cool, man. I'm glad you feel that way. I think that Poles has done this much as a GM so far, and meaning that it's won 2 preseason games. I don't know if I'm ever ready to tell somebody that they're the most amazing person after doing 2 preseason games, just as I'm not telling you Ryan Poles is the worst GM to ever walk the face of the earth after 2 preseason games. I think that's incredibly hyperbolic to say this GM and throughout 2 preseason games and 1 draft and a few months of being GM is all of a sudden one of the most amazing GMs you've seen as a first-year general manager for an NFL team. J-Rock, you'd like to see Jalen Carter and Deron Payne. Yeah, Jalen Carter's awesome. One of the most amazing prospects I've seen come out. You want to talk about a 3-tech that's you need a 3-tech. Jalen Carter's one of the best you'll ever set your eyes on from his college tape. He is ridiculous. Richard Long, Bears are banking up on coaching. Bears are banking on coaching up wannabes. The Bears are going to spend all the – what's funny is, Chubbs, I kind of agree with you, is I don't know if I agree with you on the whole cap's fake. I think the cap is fungible, which makes it look fake. I think it's such a very easy thing to manipulate and stretch that it looks like it's invisible. That's a topic for another day. I agree with you, though, here is everybody thinks that because Poles has all this money, he's just going to blow it. Like, hey, this receiver can have 25 and Elton Jenkins is a free agent. You can have, $85 million. I don't think it's going to be that way. But I also think it's in his interest to win games as the Chicago Bears GM. And I think that money has to go somewhere. I don't think he's just going to sit on it. So I think they will spend. But I don't think it's going to be in the way that I think people assume the way other teams do it. I don't think you're going to see a Tyreek Hill trade, or you're going to see, I don't know, I don't have the free agent receivers off the top of my head, but let's just say it was the Christian Kirk of next year, the somewhat prized free agent. Mike Gesicki is a great example. Let's say Cole Kmet for some reason doesn't work out. Mike Gesicki's on the franchise tag. I don't think he goes, we really need a move tight end. I'm going to give him $15 million when everybody else is making 10 on the tight end market. I don't think that happens. I think that he spends and takes a bunch of shots. And to be fair, if you want to talk about how I think I'd like a GM to run, I'll give you an example. I love what Duke Tobin in Cincinnati's done, where they've taken multiple cheaper shots. I'll give you an example where it went bad for Duke Tobin, and then I think he learned from his mistakes. Duke Tobin in Cincinnati gave Trey Waynes a mega deal, and it never did anything for them at cornerback. And it actually burned them. I think he played very little. Was injured. Now he's considering retirement. Wasted money on a free agent. Duke Tobin came back and said, okay, well, that didn't work, spending all of it on one shot. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go hire Chidobe Awuzie. I'm going to go sign Mike Hilton. We're going to drop multiple measured shots and see if we can fix this with multiple players. Same thing this year, which is, I guess, sure, you could go spend a ton of money for Brandon Scherf the way that Jacksonville did. Or Teron Armstead with Miami, and they didn't spend a ton of money on him, but, getting that number one guy. But when he's on, he's one of the best, but he's often hurt. Or you can be Duke Tobin at Cincinnati and go, you know what, we're going to give some money to Alex Kappa, to Ted Karras, to La'el Collins. We're going to just take multiple shots on cheaper things to see if that figures itself out. And I think that, to me, is my preferable way of seeing a GM operate it. Cliff, you're saying Poles wants to build a team. He's been steady and heading in that. Yeah, I agree. It doesn't all have to be about Justin, but I want to be clear. The way the league is legislated now, quarterbacks are everything. If you have one, you're capable of contending every year. If you don't, you're the Washington football team. That's what you are if you don't have a quarterback. You're the Indianapolis Colts, and I love the Indianapolis Colts, but they've been first-round playoff buys at the best because they don't have an established quarterback. So the whole thing that this comes down to is you can build that team all you want in that culture. go for it. I think it's valuable, but at what cost to your quarterback? Because at the end of the day, some can argue that's the only thing that matters. You can manipulate the cap. Everyone knows it. Yeah, sure. Uncle Justin and the Bears not having a QB pass for 4,000. Yeah, I mean, maybe, Carl. I hope. I certainly hope he blows my hair back and becomes the next Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen of the league. Justin's the first QB in a long time who could eclipse that number. Yeah, I tend to agree. I think he's got all the talent in the world. You would agree that Ryan Poles has done an amazing job saving Ted Phillips, George, if that's all he's done. Yeah. Chubbs, this is my point, is when you are the cheapest roster in the league, it begs the question of what are you trying to achieve? Well, I'm trying to be good for next year. Great. What does that do for you this year? And here D-Lou's going, you sound more like a hater. Sure. Whatever you think I sound like, that your opinion. We see the game differently. He's done exactly what he said during his first year. You rebuilt the draft, starting with the trenches, no overspending. He also said it would take time and have patience. Yeah, renewable. You're right. All of that's true. And like I said, it's his way of building it. Doesn't mean he's wrong. But I guess let me ask you this, renewable. Do you feel confident this year that Justin Fields is as well equipped and as best equipped as possible? I understand you didn't have all the money in the world to go acquire Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill or Teron Armstead, but with knowing that they're the cheapest roster in the league, with knowing that it's going to be patient, McCaskey's blessings, we're not going to overspend, we're going to build through the draft, do you actively feel that in 2022, the quarterback you traded an extra first-round pick for to move up and get, the guy that we're all saying was a blessing to be there at 11, do you feel like he's been given the absolute best chance to succeed this year? Under what that guy's of that comment that's right below my face that you're saying. That's my question here. Ryan Poles represents the financial interests of George. Yes, absolutely. Why? That's the guy that's paying his checks. Dable and Shane, but I have developed like for food. Yeah, that's fine. And like I said, I don't hate, and this is where to D-Lou's point, to be fair, D-Lou, now you're going to Chubbs. Are we even Bears fans? Because this is the thing is, and I'm okay with it. I don't mind having these conversations, and it doesn't bother me. But there's a lot of Bears fans that if you even say one negative thing, or if you're at all critical, you're not a Bears fan. It's like, I don't live in absolutes. The Bears, you want some hard truths. The Bears are a mediocre ass franchise. They have been for a while. They have one good year every 10 years, and we're allowed to enjoy one great year of Bears football, and then the other years they fail to make the playoffs. So, I don't live in absolutes. I don't think the Bears are a shining, sterling franchise that has no issues. And I would stand out for Chubbs here a little bit because I think that this is my whole point too about, should, God forbid, I tell you that I would take Justin Herbert tomorrow over Justin Fields. And some people would be like, you're ridiculous. I try to hold myself as a football fan to a higher standard. Yes, we should always want our quarterback to pass for 4,000. There are quarterbacks that pass for 5,000. So sure, let's have Justin Fields hit 4,000, but let's not just rest on our laurels and say that's good. I want superiority. I want excellence. I want sustained quality football, and the Bears have not been able to provide that. Chubbs here, you're saying I'm going to bat for you before you even did a huge Bears fan, which is why I don't cheer for the front office because they don't do what's best. Chubbs, I think we see eye to eye on this a little bit. Cliff, you're saying the Bears are not the Lions. Expand upon that. Maybe I'm not understanding it. It was probably back when I did the DJ Chark. Bears and Dable and Shane have never been to a Super Bowl. Pole's been to 2. Sure, D-Lou, he has been to 2. Who else? Nick Foles won a Super Bowl because he was under I guess that was now you can tell I'm tired. I'm talking away. He was under Doug Peterson. I'm sure we can, D-Lou, we can find plenty of guys that ride the coattails of more success. Look no further than New England. Who's the coach that was with the Texans? What is his name? Alabama. He went to Alabama as an offensive coordinator. Bill O'Brien, that's the name. And then Matt Patricia with New England got to so many Super Bowls because of, Bill Belichick. Does that mean that all of a sudden they're certainly the best GMs in their first year, the best head coaches in their first year? I don't think that that's a solid argument. Ted Phillips and George are the GM's boss, and as long as that's the reality is you respond to the people that pay your paychecks. Okay, well, I'm going to try to skip over some of the fighting here so I can get off eventually, but I'm sure where am I at? I'm at 10:52 and it's 11:04. I will work to catch up. Okay. Autonomous renewable. You're saying this is also the first time we've had an autonomous GM assistant. Outwardly, that's what they say, and I tend to believe that, but we'll see. Rose asking for too much. I am at a pulse for renewable. It's a good example. I didn't think that. I think Roquan is a $17 to $18 million a year player. I'm not paying him 20 for an off-ball linebacker, especially when I don't know what he brings as a will backer in the system yet. Chubbs, you're saying if you really believe Ryan's running the billionaire Bears without consulting George and Ted. Yeah, I mean, he meets, and this is, we want to talk about what we've been told is fact. Ryan Poles meets with George McCaskey every week. And so I'm sure he may get autonomy to do as he wishes because George is just a fan. But as a fan, I'm sure George, who holds the keys and is the one that said, you are the GM, I pick you, has some influence over the way the organization runs. You're saying PFF says, great. I actually think PFF is not as all bad as everybody says, but you'll also find plenty of people that say PFF doesn't know what they're talking about with offensive line play. It's subjective. I don't even know where to go with that comment. Poles is looking at least a 2-year rebuild. Bears weren't winning this year either way. No, Cliff, to be clear, I don't think they were winning a Super Bowl this year either. I don't think they were winning much of anything this year of meaningful content, or meaningful substance. But so sure, it's a 2-year rebuild. That's the mess that Pace left. That's why it's crappy. But so I guess I'm curious, Cliff, and you can answer this as I'm 8-9 minutes behind, and I'll get to it. I'm just asking, I'm not assuming. Do you feel like what you've seen from the Bears, this is exactly how you would have done it? There would have been nothing you would have changed because you knew it was going to be a 2-year rebuild. This is the exact way it should be done. And screw if it affects Monty in his contract year or if it affects Justin Fields or, gets him sacked a few more times because they didn't spend buku dollars on the offensive line. I'm just spitballing here, but I'm curious how you feel about that. Chubbs, you're saying you think Ryan Poles can put together a winning team, but I don't believe based on their stance with Roquan Smith that he has the financial support of the Bears to do it. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Chubbs, I'll touch upon this a little bit because something people don't like to talk about is it's actually funny. It's the Khalil Mack situation. The Raiders were actively trying to move to Las Vegas at the time that Khalil Mack wanted a mega extension, and they're different. One's an off-ball linebacker, one's edge. Khalil Mack actually became, I think he was the second highest paid behind Aaron Donald when he took his deal, or maybe it was just above what Aaron Donald made. But they literally didn't have the money in escrow to pay Khalil Mack what he wanted because they were trying to move to Las Vegas. The Bears are very well off financially. There was a report that came out that said the Bears are like one of the top 5 evaluated teams per valuation. But if they are indeed trying to fund a bid to buy a new land to build a stadium on, who knows how much money you actively have available to start paying your players. And this is how far I am behind talking about the cheese on the burger. But yeah, I mean, renewable, that's all I'm trying to say is sometimes you're absolutely right. Ryan Poles could be the smartest GM we've ever seen, and I'm a total idiot. And that Gouda cheese on the burger is the best thing that we've ever seen on a burger. Or as you said, it could totally suck, and that's why we as fans just ride along and we see what happens. Like the GM is Super Bowl winning GM already. Yeah, it's, Chubbs, you and I think we agree on this. Always have glass half full. Finally see the Bears owners back off to let the GMs. Sure, I think I guess this tells you I'm a pessimist and I'm a hater and all the other things that Bears fans like D-Lou feel like I shouldn't have a podcast for. Cliff, I guess I'm a pessimist, but I think that that's what we've been told. And sure, at some point you should give credence to, if somebody's telling you it's one way, then let's believe it's one way. But I don't know if I'm ready to fully buy in and say, without a doubt, no doubt about it, the GM and Ian Cunningham, Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham are totally autonomous. They don't have any influence. And Ted Phillips and George McCaskey in Virginia are they're off in the Bahamas not doing it. I don't know if I'm ready to say that. All NFL teams are required to spend a certain percentage. They can't spend nothing. Yeah, absolutely, Cliff. They do have to spend a certain percentage. I'm just saying that right now the Bears have spent less than anybody else. 31 other teams, they are the cheapest. That doesn't mean that they are cheap. It just means that this year there has been absolutely the least amount of motivation to spend on the active roster. And sure, if that's to reset it so that they have everything available next year or anything, it just and this is just a simple question. Like, are we as fans supposed to just be okay with that? And there's no right or wrong answer. You can, as a fan, can totally say, I've said this before, fan how you want to fan. You can say, I'm totally okay with the Bears being cheap for a year, blowing it up, not competing really, so that they can be good to go. That's a serviceable answer. I also think somebody on the other side of the bridge could totally say, no, I'm a fan and I expect total relevance and competency every single year. And I'll be damned if they're going to sit there and expect me to wait a year while they don't spend any money. I think both have valid points. Yeah, Chubbs, I like I said, I tend to agree a little bit. I don't think that Ryan Poles just gets full blank check, do whatever you want. This is your franchise. But like I said, we're gonna see the game differently between other people, and that's okay. Poles has the checkbook and he's frugal. Renewable, I think that's true too. I absolutely think he's frugal, which is why I think it's funny when people are like, they're just going to ball out next year. Like, what if you're saying philosophically he's cheap and he's frugal, then why would he all of a sudden just go on a spending spree? I don't necessarily think it's that easy. La'el Collins is still in the league. The Cowboys did cut him. He did sign with the Cincinnati Bengals, Inglewood, and he is now their starting right tackle. Cliff, you're absolutely right. You cannot rebuild in 1 year. This is the whole just argument about it's how you rebuild, how you navigate and move forward. Something I'd said in Bear Debate earlier is I had said, I'm not so upset that they didn't sign Roquan to a big deal, because every single big deal you do, whether we want to admit it or not, you lock into a certain vision. If the Titans, I'll give you a perfect example in two different ways. The Titans. If the Titans paid A.J. Brown, they closed off. They have a number one receiver making over $20 million a year. A.J. Brown better be the shit. And maybe he would have been. But the moment that they traded A.J. Brown, it opened up an avenue to go, okay, we can either pay multiple slot receivers, we can bring in free agents, we can draft Treylon Burks, and then draft like a slot and Kyle Phillips. We can do different things as opposed to locking ourselves into to A.J. Brown. On the flip side, I watched them lock themselves in to Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, and it's worked well. But Ryan Tannehill, the quarterback they locked themselves into for massive financials, threw 3 interceptions in a playoff game, and now they're considering they've drafted a third-round pick, and it's becoming when is it going to transition? Because they locked themselves into Ryan Tannehill, and now they had to find a way out of that box. They signed Derrick Henry to a mega deal, and he earned every bit of it. He's a hard runner, has a metal plate in his foot now, and had to miss a large portion of last year, and they were a killer team that still found a way to the first seed. But that's what happens to running backs, and now they're drafting Hassan Haskins in the 3rd round out of Michigan to be the next replacement, because that mega contract locks you into things. And this is the thing. You're saying, like, you can't rebuild in 1 year. Absolutely. It's why I'm glad he didn't. But this is an example. Take a DJ Chark. You're not locking yourself in beyond 1 year at $10 million. Don't re-sign a Roquan before you've seen him and lock yourself into an off-ball linebacker in the way it's built. But to your point, Cliff, if it can't be rebuilt in 1 year, I agree to that. But then what direction are you navigating in? And that's, I think, where I've been trying to get to is it's just a question about how we're building. Are we going left, right? And he went left in a few areas, and I thought maybe it would have been worthwhile to go right. That's really the best way to put it. An anonymous source from the organization tells the media stuff about Roquan Smith. Yeah, I mean, maybe. Poles didn't move up to get Pickens, though. Sure. And Pickens, it's funny. The Pickens thing right now is so funny to me because, yes, he is killing it. But, there were Greg Gabriel, who I think certainly has connections within the league, said that there were real character concerns about Pickens and all that stuff. So, sure, Antonio Brown was Antonio Brown absolutely was an awesome receiver. All the skill in the world, showed it. And then off the field issues kind of wrecked his career in Pittsburgh and beyond. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen to Pickens, but I was an Alec Pierce guy ahead of Pickens by a little bit, but this is the point is Poles didn't move up. I thought he should have moved up for a receiver, but I also think it's easy to pile on now and say this player's – I do it all the time. Thomas Booker looks good. Khalil Shakir looks awesome. I think we should have drafted Khalil Shakir at 148 and Thomas Booker at 150. But it's easy to play, quarterback hindsight, 50-50 hindsight, and go, hey, I would have done this and that. And I know it annoys some people like D-Lou earlier and other things like that. Like I said, it's just about the sliding doors and saying, could you have done this a different way? And would it have been worthwhile? Would it have been a poor result? Just interesting stuff to talk about, to chew on. Media stuff saying about Jenkins anonymously. Yeah, Chubbs, I thought that was interesting too. Just all the negative talk about Jenkins, and now we're seeing that maybe Greg Gabriel, who I was just talking about, said he thought it was to motivate him. Big cost free agents rarely pay off. Next year, Jordan will polls give Justin the pieces he needs done. That's enough. Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll see. To give you a point, Cliff, like where I look at it is you have 4 years of cheap, and to be fair, year 5 is pretty cheap too. But and Vaughn, I see you're saying, I hope I'm not ending the stream soon. I was trying to end it, but I'm so far behind now. I'm at 11:02, and it's 14. But I will catch up. Cliff, to your point. We have the pieces. And Justin Fields, year 1 is 20% cheap. Year 2, 40% cheap. Year 3, 60% of the contract is cheap. Year 4, 80% of the contract is completed. It's cheap. Then you move to year 5. If you pick up the 5th year option, it's still relatively cheap for good quarterbacks. But this is my point. If you're telling me what you're saying, that it's just one more year to wait, sure. Josh Allen had the same thing. When 40% of his rookie contract was up, he still lit it up in year 3, year 4, and beyond. It could happen. On the other hand, too, if Justin Fields is the guy, though, and he could have been the guy, and you were trying to make sure he was successful and develop around him, and I get it. We've talked about he wasn't going to win this year. But isn't the whole job to evaluate and see if he's the guy and really see if that's the one you want to lock yourself into, dedicate your money to? If so, you're now telling me that we're going to let 40% of that cheap Justin years go by before we really get to evaluate. And that's the question. Amazing no one ever asked the media why. Yeah, it's interesting, Chubbs. I think a 2-year rebuild, it's a fast turnaround, and we can live with a mediocre year as long as they're progressing. Sure. Like I said, and Cliff, I hope you understand, I'm not like trying to pick or poke really at anybody. It's just we're talking and shooting the shit as we go through it. Bears are mediocre because they keep bringing GMs that suck at drafting and personnel. Yeah, it's I appreciate the honesty, Inglewood. Yes, I tend to agree. They haven't had a great list of GMs and haven't spent money in the best ways and had a quarterback issue and, paid running backs like Matt Forte. And I think Matt Forte should have got paid, but there's been questions. You traded a lot for Jay Cutler and it just never worked out. You traded away Greg Olsen. You've done all these different things and who knows? Nagy Road reads code sales. Yes. I mean, this goes back to Dio's point of, people, Matt Patricia, for example, writing coattails. Chubbs is a hater. Nothing wrong with that, but it's true. The Chubbs responding with, I'm not a hater. And I hope that we're all just being calm, respectful, playful. We can say people are haters, but we just see the game differently, and there's no right or wrong answer there. Okay, and then as I try to catch up here, if Justin Fields is the man, he'll look the part. The rising tide lift all boats. Renewable, I actually tend to believe that too. A quarterback is the straw that stirs the drink. If he's really worth his weight, he'll find a way to elevate the talent around him. So I get that, but I also think try to help the guy out. Like, yes, we want Hercules that can carry the Atlas, who can carry the world on his shoulders, but if he doesn't have to, let's try to help him out. This is where we're finally getting back to Cliff. You said you might have done some different things, but looking at what polls has done, I'm pretty happy. Good. And that's cool. Like I said, fan how you want to fan. If I like I said, I come across as a hater, as a pessimist, all these things I know I'm going to get shit comments here for this part of the show. But I also think it's totally okay to say you're satisfied, you're happy with the way that it's been handled. And there's nothing wrong with that. You want Jojo Logo say, not a fan of undersized defensive linemen. Yeah, well, and that's a great example is in a 4-3 where you need attacking defensive linemen and people that penetrate the gaps and play one gap defense. You're going to get some of those smaller, quicker guys as opposed to these big hulking 1 techs and 4 eyes and 5 tech defensive line that you're going to see in 3-4s, which was what you had in the 3-4. Eddie Goldman, Akeem Hicks, Roy Robertson Harris, Angelo Blacks, and these bigger guys. Tonga, who was drafted, Poles is a lot more inside info than I do. Yeah, absolutely, Cliff, and that's where I am as Nomad and other people say, I'm just a couch GM. Got to trust the guy until he wins or is proven wrong. Sure. Have you seen McCaskey or Phillips involved in anything so far? I haven't, but I also, like I said, so the way I try to do it, and this is where I thought Chubbs had a good point, is have I seen McCaskey or George McCaskey or Ted Phillips in anything so far? And I haven't. But flip the question and then ask yourself, is it likely that George gave the whole keys to the castle, blank checks and everything to Poles with Cliff Stein and all those guys and said, hey, I'm going to go vacation and party and I'll see you during the regular season and you just handle it? I don't know if that doesn't seem so likely to me. And then Chubbs and I think we're a little more simpatico here, more of a prove it guy than trust him. Yeah, Chubbs, and that's where I know some people would say that we're pessimistic or, ridiculous, but that's my thing is, to Cliff's point, like, you got to trust him. There's nothing wrong with trusting them, but I also don't think the other side of the fence is I don't have to trust them. I prove it. Show me that you should be trusted. And I don't think there's a wrong point to that either. You have hope that they're just sitting in their offices playing golf courses. Yeah, I hope you're right. Like I said, I just happened to stumble upon answering that beforehand. That doesn't seem so likely to me. For a guy that's a fan, do you just sit and play golf and wait till the regular season? No, you're in chat rooms. If he's as much of a fan as he says he is, which I think we all agree he is, taking photos with fans at training camp, he's around. He's keeping an eye on what the team's doing, how they're moving around, and he has the ability to go, I don't like this. I hired you. I picked you up at the airport. You respond to me. You answer to me. And, so like I said, I don't anticipate that. I don't think it's just as free-flowing as it may seem. I think that they're operating quietly in the background. Jordan Jimenez, have I heard the rumors? Yeah, I know Jeff Hughes from the Bears blog said that Virginia is not in a good health state, and that's awful. Prayers go out to her, and life is fleet. It can be over at any moment, so we should all be thankful and appreciative for life while it goes. And yeah, here's Chris Gonzalez razzing me. Well, Zach Wilson looking stellar. Yeah, Zach Wilson's been hurt. Zach Wilson did not look good in his first game, and it's okay, Chris. You don't have to like Zach Wilson. I do. You don't have to. I think that, I'll razz you one back, and it doesn't mean that every GM is right, but Justin Fields got passed on not just for Zach Wilson, but for Trey Lance. And so, there were quite a few other GMs that, at the time there was rumors that, Atlanta wanted to move up and select Zach Wilson, and the Panthers really wanted Zach Wilson if they could have found a way to move up and get him. So clearly the league seemed to think a little higher of Zach Wilson than Justin Fields. Take it for what you will. I don't think I'm wrong for liking a guy that was phenomenal his last year at BYU and has spectacular arm talent. But yes, to your point, he's out, he's hurt, and didn't play well when he was in. Pickens and future Antonio Brown. Yeah, maybe. We'll see, Cliff. I hope not. Antonio Brown's a guy that worries me with his mental health, but hopefully Pickens is okay, and I don't have any bad ill will towards the Steelers. I hope that they hit on it. They have a good history of hitting on receivers. Bears aren't cheap. They just spend their own money on ones. Yeah, to be fair, Derek, I don't actually think that they're cheap. I think that they've tried to make moves. That's why George signed off on, go get a Khalil Mack. Yeah, go get a Jay Cutler. I think they've shown willingness to try and make big moves. He's the one that literally had to have co-signed and said, yeah, Ryan Pace, go ahead and go get Justin Fields. I know Mitch didn't work. I know Nick Foles didn't work. Go get Justin Fields. I think that they've tried. They're willing to take risks. But as you said, it just hasn't worked out. Jordan, Bears take a wide receiver and they win. No way. I took a line. Sure. Cliff, like you said, I don't think it was a very easy fix. But what I do know is that the way the league is legislated nowadays, and it's the old adage of defense wins championships. Defense is super important. But go look at, and this is, I wish I had the stats ready to go for you, but go look at the teams that make the playoffs every year now for the last 5 years and see every team that makes the playoffs and see what their offensive DVOA is, their EPA on offense, all those nice sabermetrics that tell you how efficient their offenses are, how they finished on offense. And I think that what you'll see the trend is that offenses are what take you to the promised land, that take you to the meaningful football. And it's not that defenses are worthless, but when you're thinking, I mean, I this is my favorite one to go back to is the Bills have a defensive coach. The first things they did is brought in Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, and they're a very good defense. They're one of the best defenses in the league. And, you know, they brought a bunch of like smaller names at receivers to help Josh Allen. And then Josh Allen got better with those guys, but then they realized this isn't enough. I have to go get my young quarterback a wide receiver one. I have to give away a first-round pick to go get Stephon Diggs. So as much as I totally agree with you, Cliff, that like wide receiver, just draft a wide receiver, doesn't mean they automatically win. But I think what you'd see in the league nowadays, the way it's legislated, is that you have to have a banging offense to be able to make noise. And that's the question of, I don't think that they did a lot to create that this year. And is that totally wrong? No, but I'm not sure that's the way I would have done it. That's why they would keep 5 tight ends. Yeah, maybe. Forte get the stats, live up to the deal he got with the Jets. No, he did not. Forte, from what I remember, I thought he flamed out a lot after the Bears. No, Cliff, it's all love. I get it. We're just talking. Chubbs, you're just passionate. Yeah, we all are. And as Cliff says, we all want the Bears to win. Even guys like D-Lou who don't totally agree with Chubbs or I in the way we believe it's not. I don't shit on the Bears or be skeptical of their moves because I want them to lose. I want the same thing that we're all after. And this is why football is so beautiful, because we can look at it and say, I would have done this way to get to the promised land. Well, I would have done it this way. And it doesn't mean that one's wrong, just one or the other. Does Ryan Poles or Luke Getzey go after Elton Jenkins or Quentin Nelson next offseason? I think Quentin Nelson gets locked up. You don't spend a number 6 pick on a guard and not pay him. Elton Jenkins is valuable, can play all 5 positions on the line. I'm not sure that he would go, but I also think, let me put it this way. You want to talk about one. If Elton Jenkins found his way to the free agent market, I think that would be the guy that they splurge for more than anybody, more than a 3-tech, more than anybody. I think Elton Jenkins, Green Bay guy, knows Luke Getzey, knows the scheme, can play all 5 positions, valuable. He's a very good player. He's not so old. I think Elton Jenkins would be the guy that they blow a ton of money on if he made it. You hate the Packers, hate Brew. Yeah, well, see, and that's where Chubbs and I will differ a little bit. I don't love the Packers. They're a rival, and I hope that they lose every time they play the Bears. But I like all football, and I know Aaron Rodgers is a schmuck to a lot of people. I also think he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and I can't deny it. When he plays, it's freaking awesome to watch. And obviously not against the Bears, but everybody else too. Don't like the Cassidy, but Chelsea. Yeah, I don't either. Our defense will be nice while our offense will lead the league in positions. I don't know what you mean in lead the league in positions, but I'm sure you'll let me know. And I'm finally catching up, guys. It's 11:20 on my ticker here of the messages. It's 27, so I'm getting there. George is a rich kid. He's a fan. Maybe it's easy to let somebody else do his job. Very familiar with corporate life. Bosses like to take these. Yeah, it's George and Ted have to answer the board, which includes 2 minority owners. That's a good point, J-Rock. They do have to answer to people. George is on a scooter during. Yes, he was. He was on a scooter. I forgot about that. Jordan Menace. He's rolling around on his little Vespa or his Segway, talking to fans. Renewable, you're saying you got to pick with George at camp this year. Rose Tweet didn't seem to move ownership. Renewable, you probably have a Twitter, or maybe I don't know if you follow me, or I certainly didn't. I'd love to see the picture with you and George. It's pretty awesome. And that's cool too. That's why he's a fan. It's cool to be able to say I take photos with the fans and I'm a chairman, I'm an owner. By all accounts, George is a good guy. Maybe a little misled about how to run a football team, but I don't even hold that against him too much. We all want the Bears to win, but I don't think he's a bad guy. Bears don't keep consistent success because teams figure out the following season. Yeah. Okay. My throat is a little drying and I'm not able to talk. Super Bowl's been won on defense like 9 out of the last 10 years. Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to look back to this last year and think Aaron Donald was a star and that's what happened. And sure, I mean, it's interesting. I think you watched 2 teams get to the Super Bowl because Joe Burrow had an offense with even a bad offensive line with Jamar Chase, and that lifted them. And their defense did play solid. And then you also saw, look, the Rams have had a good defense, and then they got a quarterback that they needed, and it shot up. So I think you could see it both ways, and that's why football is interesting. Bears had so many needs fixing, anyone would not have brought a winner. Yeah, Cliff, and that's, I think if we can find any common ground on anything, I agree. I think that it was a bad situation that wasn't going to be fixed in one offseason. It's just about which, I guess, and this is an analogy I like to use, and I don't think you'll agree with this, but Ryan Poles inherited a boat in the middle of water, and the boat was logging water. It had plenty of holes in it, and it was waterlogged and starting to sink. And he had only a finite number of patches and duct tape and nails and things like that to patch it up. And he decided to, in my opinion, patch up smaller holes that may have been more insignificant right now, and left bigger ones that I think should have garnered more attention open and letting water in. And that's not something I expect you to agree with, but that is something where, on the other hand, you would tell me, no, I think I trust him, and I think he's been plugging the right holes, and that's okay. But we still stand on the same common ground that the boat had too many holes and it was letting too much water in, and there was a finite number of patches. It wasn't enough to fix it. You think he should have plugged these. I think he should have plugged these, and, time will tell, and we'll see. No defense gets you the 2008 Detroit Lions. I think that that's very easy to say. I think that, yes, I'm not going to deny, but I also think the Detroit Lions are a franchise that continuously find, for whatever reason, failure. Isn't this also the first front? Yes, renewable. By all accounts, the Bears have been a franchise that doesn't use sabermetrics analytics that much, and this is the first regime to bring it into the forefront, into the modern era, I believe. Brad Spielberger's talked about that and a few others. Great offense and bad defense equals Atlanta. Sure, we can pick. I'm sure we can pick various examples of defenses that were bad and great offenses, and it doesn't equal certain things. I guess I could sit here for 5 minutes and try to think of examples to find or explain my position, but you're right. I'm sure that there's plenty of offenses that are great with bad defenses, and it doesn't get you anywhere. And I'm sure if I spent some time, we could probably find a few offenses that are great, bad defenses, and they still were able to find success. What would be your plan? Cody said, what would be my plan of giving complete control? That part is so complicated, and that's where I don't want to crap out and say I'm too scared to make a stance or take a stance on it. I think I talked about it a little bit. I probably would have selected a wide receiver in the first round, an X receiver, a big ball winner. I would have probably retained some younger talent like a James Daniels. But I also understand I'm not Chris Morgan and I'm not Ryan Poles. I wasn't a former offensive lineman as an undrafted free agent with the Chicago Bears. And I wasn't Chris Morgan, who's been coaching offensive linemen forever in the league. And they could have looked at James Daniels and said, that guy is nothing. So some of that's hard. But I certainly would have taken more measured approaches at different positions, guard, wide receiver, nickel cornerback. I probably wouldn't have made Larry Ogunjobi my first move. I would have maybe tried to lock up a Ben Jones or a Brian Allen. I know that there was talks that they tried to get Brian Allen, but still the for sure contract offer that got made was Larry Ogunjobi. And so those are some of the examples that I'll give you a great one. I probably wouldn't have waited for Riley Reif and Michael Schofield till way after the draft and right before training camp to then decide I should raise the floor up of my offensive line. I also think if you're an offensive lineman as a GM and your assistant GM is a former offensive lineman, sure, you may think you probably are a savant in identifying talent, but just statistically speaking, when you're in a draft and you're picking players in the 5th round or the 6th round and not in the 2nd, your player pool to choose from is less. And even if, yes, there's a Trey Smith or, all these other offensive linemen that are selected late and they pan out to be great players, but statistically speaking, your options to find hits or statistically worse selecting offensive linemen in the 5th and 6th round than they would have been in the 2nd or the 3rd. And so the question is, if you're a former offensive lineman and you know how important that is to the lifeblood of an offense and supporting your quarterback, I found it a little strange that you went bargain bin picking in the draft for that, and in free agency, waiting till the right before training camp to get Reef and Schofield, as opposed to trying to go other ways. Pretty much what Poles is doing: fix holes and build the cap to get superstars next offseason. Yep. Renewable, appreciate it. Thank you for hanging out, and we'll try to wrap this up shortly. Bear down, thank you. CJ, yes, it is late night. I never seem to get out of here early, but that's okay. I like talking with you all. Let's hire the coaching staff. You want me to give Brian Poles credit? I'll give him. Yeah, Chubbs. I mean, that's one thing. Is like I said, I don't know what the long-term ceiling is with this coaching staff, but there's no doubt in my mind that they are professional, they're disciplined, they're doing things the right way, they're trying to build a team, they're trying to build accountability, culture, holding guys to a certain standard. That part I completely agree with. I think it's all good. I just don't know if that gets you a Super Bowl. And that you had said something earlier, Chubbs, or maybe somebody else was, that isn't it amazing that we're pleased with like a competency at offense. When we talk about nagging, it's like, oh my God, they look competent because they ran a rollout with Justin Fields, and all of that's positive. But there's a question of, are we being too complimentary with coaching that's solid when maybe you should be going for great? And I'm not. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Flus, but I certainly think the coaching staff is positive. Your drive for the show for the it's golf. The offense will get you there. Yep. I mean, Derek, you're totally right. I see your point. Jordan. Bears will address the big holes next offseason when they have cap money. Yeah, it's interesting. As you're saying, Cliff, either one of us could be right. Hopefully, the people aren't sure. Yeah, I mean, let me be clear. And yes, I would love the ability to work in the NFL and do work and things of that sort. Be a GM. All that would be dream aspirations. But I also know my role. I am a fan. I'm a couch GM. I'm just here doing a late night show, shooting the shit with all you guys. And if there's one thing we can agree with, Cliff, I would love to tell you I'm absolutely right, but not at the expense of the Chicago Bears' success. I hope that Ryan Poles shuts me the hell up. He's the smartest man in the world and knows exactly what he's doing, and the Bears are successful, because then that means you and I both win and we're all successful and happy, and the team we root for is doing great, and I hope that happens. Cody's saying, fair enough. I appreciate that. I mean, like I said, I just my take doesn't mean I'm right. I just think I would have maybe approached a few things a little differently. Any feels on Velus Jones being a good receiver? Yeah, it's. I'll jump to that, Cody, in just a second. Cliff is saying Ogunjobi was an unfortunate cut, but can you keep a guy who may not play? Yeah, it's. By the way, Cliff, just so we're clear, I was happy they didn't sign Ogunjobi. I was freaking elated because I felt like they dodged a bullet without knowing it. I thought he was a very inconsistent player in run defense, and that's cool that he can penetrate. But you also got to – I don't want players that excel in just one thing. I want well-rounded players that do it all. And I thought you were spending a lot of money on a guy that maybe, like I said, maybe Flus knows what I don't, and he would have been the best 3-tech in the entire league. But I didn't think he was that guy, so I was happy to see them not pay him. But I also think putting that money into Ogunjobi led to a position where their money was tied up in him. And as they waited and waited, other guys got signed, and it was a misstep. And then, Cody, as you were saying, he feels on Velus being I think Velus Jones is a developing wide receiver. I think he has room to grow. I don't think he's refined. I think he certainly can be better in his route running and tempo, and not rounding off cuts and cutting corners on it. I think he can be a better receiver in the intricacies of what it is to be a complete wide receiver. And that's not a shot. It's fine. He's a rookie, develop. But I think right now his role should be scheme him touches, get him open in space, and let him make money with that speed, with that ability to break tackles. And like I said, I may not have loved I certainly didn't love the Velus pick when it happened, but I have come around to say, if you got a great return specialist in the 3rd round who's electric, not even Devin Hester, but like let's say he's Darren Sproles or Cordell Patterson. I'm trying to think of some other returners that have been really good. I mean, one that like people forget is like D'Angelo Hall. If he's just a really good returner in the 3rd round, that's a pretty good pick. And if he becomes a guy that gets you 1 to 2 explosive plays a game outside of the return game, just by catching a screen or taking a reverse or something like that, that's for a 3rd round pick at number 71. I think that's pretty good. There was one guy that was instrumental in Bears coaches and GMs this year, Bill Polian, if Bears come back. Yeah. I see. It's funny because I think Bill Polian absolutely was a great GM for a long time. I question he wasn't in the league for like 10 years when they brought him into the picture. So we'll see. I certainly agree with you, Cliff. If they come back, he does deserve a lot of credit. But that was one that I was like, you're going to bring in Bill Polian? That's the guy that you want making the decisions for you? And I'll give you an example. I certainly don't think it was a total coincidence that the guys that were hired all had connections to the Colts in some way. And what I mean by that is Ryan Poles was a GM under Chris Ballard, or not a GM, but was a staff member under Chris Ballard when Chris Ballard was a ranking executive with the Chiefs, and is familiar with Chris Ballard, who is now the GM of the Colts. He became the GM of the Bears, and then magically, I know Poles says I made the decision to hire Flus, and he probably did, but I certainly think there was some motivation to say you should probably take Poles, or excuse me, you should probably take Flus, because you look at it and you say, okay, well, Poles has a relationship with Ballard. Ballard's the GM in Indianapolis. Polian used to work in Indianapolis, still has very close ties there with Jim Irsay. Flus is a guy that's been rumored to be, in the coaching circle. Jacksonville's interviewing him. Hey, this guy has the Lovey connection with Rod Marinelli. Sure makes sense that we bring him back, and he's a stable force for you as a rookie GM. And like I said, you want to talk about some real conspiracy theorists, but I don't think that was totally coincidence that that's how it ended up. And then you are, unless I'm wrong, I think you were actually my last comment here, Cliff, and I think most people have tapped out as I'm seeing by the viewer numbers. But as you were saying, I'm way more informed. I don't know if I'm more informed of details. I just like talking about this stuff, and it doesn't mean I'm right. It's just my opinion. And I appreciate the kind words, Cliff. So I will give a couple more minutes. It's 11:40. If you want to give, I don't know, a minute, maybe more, if anybody has any final things. But if not, I guess I'll let that roll in as I get into my outro here. Barflies, Bears fans, I appreciate you hanging out. I am Jordan Silveira. You can find me at Jordan T. Silveira on Twitter. Thank you for hanging out with me for the last 3.5 hours, I think it's been. Yes, almost 3.5 hours. Thanks for joining on this journey. I hope you found it insightful, educational, informative, engaging, and all the fun stuff that we try to achieve here as we talk about team building and roster spending and scheme. And I get blacked out by YouTube for trying to show game film from tonight and all that fun stuff, and talking about breaking down the cuts and 27 people that have to be removed from the Bears roster here to get down to 53. It's been fun. I appreciate all you members in the chat. I cannot thank you enough. You do such a great job engaging and talking along, and I try my best to have the conversation with you. And I know it's always a little bit limited when you're in the chat box and I'm here, but try to do my best. I've had a great time tonight. I always appreciate you all, and please do the algorithm stats for nerds, all the stuff that helps Barroom and Aldo Gandia, our president here. You can find him at Aldo Barkeeper on Twitter. As always, if you're seeing this on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, Barroom Network at all those places at Barroom Network. Like the video, subscribe, retweet, share with your friends, and I look forward to connecting with you all at some point. And hopefully I will figure out this algorithm a little more, as one of the things I really hope to do as we get into the season after this Saturday game. It'll be breaking down film and going over some critical plays. So thank you all so much. You all have a wonderful night. And of course, as always, bear down. Enjoy, everybody. Have a great night.